And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. It is Friday, September 10th. And it's Friday, so that means it's Friday free-for-all mailbag time. And I'm your host. I'm Vince D'Addario. I'm the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. And don't worry, have no fear. Brian Driscoll will be here. All right, so he is on his way. He's just slightly delayed, but he will be in here to partake in our normal Friday mailbag session. So today we are going to be answering all of your questions as best as we can. And again, of course, tomorrow is the home opener for Notre Dame. They are taking on Toledo at 2:30 on Peacock. Yes, on Peacock, not on NBC. So if you are inclined to watch, you will have to subscribe. I don't know if I would use the word lucky, but I am a Comcast subscriber, so I get it automatically, which I guess is nice. It's just one less thing to worry about, I guess. But for all of you that will be at the game, it's supposed to be a pretty nice day. A little on the hot side, mid-80s, I believe, is in the forecast. But a beautiful day for football. And it is going to be a lit crowd. I am very excited about what this crowd is going to be like, both in the stadium and outside the stadium before the game starts. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. That's my anticipation. And if Notre Dame plays the way Brian and I hope that they play, that we feel like they will play, then it makes it even better. So game one at home, game two overall. Should be a very interesting afternoon for Notre Dame fans out there. So I am going to just jump in with some questions here as I find them, and we'll see what happens when Brian gets here. All right. Let's see here. Tommy Gunn says, "Happy Friday, everybody. Does the Sports Beat app have the radio broadcast of the game? I will not be paying for Peacock." It does not. They cannot play it on SportsBeat app. That's for those who are not local. SportsBeat is the show that is on the local WSBT radio station, and it's a show that I'm on quite often. Actually, I'm on tonight at 5:00 with Sean Stiers, but it will not be on that. It is on. There's an app called Audacity that will carry the Notre Dame games live. So Audacity app, it will have the radio broadcast. That's kind of what WSBT will feed, and I guess they got permission to put the radio broadcast of the Notre Dame game on there. Normally, the app will go to alternate programming once the game starts. It's all contract stuff, right? So to my knowledge, the only way to listen to the game on an app is through the Audacity app. There might be a way to do it through the Notre Dame website. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know the Audacity app. It's Audacity, I think, Audacity. But anyway, look it up. I don't personally have it because I haven't had to, listen to it on an app before, but I believe that will get you what you need, Tommy. So definitely, hey, man. Look, I love Mike Tirico, and I'm sure Drew Brees is going to do, a good job and all, but there's nothing better than a radio broadcast, in my opinion. So, the radio's good stuff. So highly recommend radio. And then Tommy also says, is anyone saddened by the fact that there are only 11 more currently scheduled games for Notre Dame? Every week, man, we tick one off. And that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. We can hope for a couple more after those 11 scheduled games, of course, but Notre Dame's going to have to hold up their end of the bargain for that one. A lot of people wondering who is, going to be purchasing Peacock to watch the game. I think somebody in the chat said it's only $2 for the month, so you have to spend $2 to watch the game. Here's a kind of an interesting, let's see here. We got an interesting conversation here. Benj 1801 says the Big 12 is a group of 5 conference with their additions. Change my mind. I'm not going to change your mind. I haven't seen the official list of the additions. I know that there were some teams that were petitioning to be a part of the Big 12. I believe Cincinnati was one of them. Hey, Brian, welcome. Hey, you can speak to this too. The Big 12 is a group of 5 conference with their additions. Change my mind, says Benj 1801. What are your thoughts on the potential new Big 12 once Texas and Oklahoma, leave for what they believe are greener pastures in the SEC?
I don't agree with that. I think, I understand where that premise is coming from because you don't have really any great Power 5 programs left in the Big 12 unless you count TCU and Iowa State as big-time programs. I don't.
Yeah. Right.
They're good Power 5 programs. Maybe those are 2 top 25 teams consistently. Oklahoma's 2 top 25 teams consistently. And then you're taking the best of what's left of the AAC, in my opinion. I mean, you're taking Cincinnati, you're taking Houston, right? You're taking UCF, and then you're taking BYU, who's an independent. You're taking 4 of the better, group of 5 teams, with the exception of Boise State. And so I think that they are teams that, to me, deserve to be in the Power 5, in my opinion, especially Cincinnati. Cincinnati's basically considered a major program in other sports, just not football. They used to be in sort of the Power 5-ish type of thing when they were in the Big East.
Yeah, right.
So I think that to me, Cincinnati's a legitimate program. I mean, look, right now, Cincinnati's a top 10 program. I believe BYU's a top 25 program. UCF should be a top 25 program. They've had a recent undefeated season. And BYU, right, finished, in the top 25 last year. So is there a big name like there was with Oklahoma, Texas? No.
Well, and look, you're not going to find
a really good conference.
You're not going to find anybody to straight up replace Oklahoma and Texas. I mean,
not now, not this soon. Like,
right?
Maybe what they can do is have really build this league up and make it fun and make it entertaining and all that kind of stuff. You're kind of getting into parts of the country that you weren't in before.
Sure.
In Florida and Ohio and so then maybe you can build your league up enough to where it becomes more attractive for a couple Pac-12 teams or Nebraska to come back to or something like that. So, I like the move. I think it's smart.
Yeah, well, and they're being proactive. I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, they're not just sitting back and just hoping that things work out. They're actually being proactive and either actively recruiting or however that relationship began, whether it was those teams reaching out to the Big 12 or vice versa, they're not just sitting on their hands, which I do think that is good. Because, if you want to be irrelevant real fast, just sit back and let it happen to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or go get other, Power 5 teams that wouldn't add – because, here's the thing. Cincinnati's a decent-sized market, but you get Cincinnati and Kentucky, right?
Sure.
Central Florida is the biggest public school in America. Orlando is a huge area, and so you're going to have access to that. That's an important thing. Houston's a big market, and, look, Houston used to be that kind of program. I mean, Houston, to me, was a Power 5 school stuck in a group of 6 conference, right? I mean, that's kind of how I've always viewed Houston. And then BYU, this is a team that's won a national championship, right? This isn't Memphis, right? This isn't – they're not in a huge market, but they add, to me, respectability from a sports standpoint. And BYU has been good in football recently, not great, but they've got some other sports that are really good. BYU's had a really good basketball team in recent seasons. So I think it adds some credibility to this conference in a lot of different ways. So I like the move. Is it as good as basically you traded Oklahoma and Texas for 4 teams.
Yeah.
So I think overall it makes it a little bit of a different looking conference. And if I were them, I would still look to add 2 more. I mean, look, numbers, the name of your conference doesn't matter anymore. I mean, the Big 10 has 14 teams.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
The Big 12's had 10 teams for how long?
Yeah, for a while.
Right.
The only conference that actually changed their name when they upped the teams was the Pac-12.
Well, the Big 12 did at first. They went from the Big 8 to the Big 12.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when they lost, Missouri, they lost like a couple of those teams. They went state, that they were, because they couldn't change their name then because they'd had to change to the Big 10.
Right.
But they may go Big 14. I mean, the Pac-8 went from the Pac-8 to the Pac-12 to the Pac-10 to the Pac-12. They've changed their name. Go to the Big 14 if you want to. I don't care. It's not like the Big 12's been their name. The Big 12 was their name when they went to 12 teams.
Right.
So, yeah, I like the move. Again, are they going to be the fifth of the Power Fives? Yeah. Is that conference still better than the AAC? Absolutely. Because you just took all but Memphis, or that you took all the best teams out of the AAC. And you have Baylor. You have TCU. You have Oklahoma State.
Sure.
All programs that are better than anybody that the AAC has.
Matthew Thomas is fired up. Let's go, baby. This is ND football. Let's go.
Did I miss any fun stuff while I was
not
away?
Really.
Okay.
Not really.
Wow. So you're just poo-pooing on the questions that you had earlier on. I see how
we barely got into the questions when you came on. I was just doing like a little intro, talking about the game tomorrow, things of that nature. And make sure everybody, after the game tomorrow, we will have our post-game podcast. So make sure everybody hits that notification bell.
Smash the bell, because you're going to want to know. You're going to want to know. When we get in the car and start heading to the house, we're going to put that sucker out.
Yes, absolutely.
To let you know, hey, look, we're going to be going here T-minus 30 or an hour or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Let's see. Cameron Burr, is there a specific reason why Jordan Patel is unavailable? Is he being disciplined?
Yeah, so Carmine, this is one of those things about Brian Kelly that drives me nuts.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
We kind of discussed this summer that there were some rumblings that he had gotten into some trouble and he would be suspended. I have heard for a year. I've heard for 4 games. Somebody on our message board yesterday said that, his people he knows have great sources have said it's less than 4 games, which would be very ideal for Notre Dame, certainly. But he clearly is not. It's not a COVID thing. It's not an injury thing. It's clearly related to some sort of disciplinary action. Instead of just getting it out of there and just saying, like we said this summer, look,
right.
There were some things that came up. Jordan had some things got to get taken care of. We've got those things taken care of, but the result is he's not going to be available for the first couple of games. But he's in good standing right now. Everything is now behind us. He's practicing. He's going to be good to go. We're going to have him for whatever game. But instead, Brian Kelly just leaves it flapping in the wind, gets super indignant when anyone had the audacity to ask him about it, pretends like there's nothing there, and then he's unavailable and he won't say why.
Right, and they put out a tweet right before the game that has him as unavailable.
Which you and I both knew him and Sebo were going to be on that list.
Right.
Right? Because, you don't go from being real. I mean, people were talking about how he should be playing over Isaiah Foskey the way he played in the spring. And all of a sudden, first day of fall camp, he's third string and getting no look. I mean, and you're moving Justin Adamiola to
it's just so
Viper
obvious.
Just freaking say it. Just say, hey, listen, this is a team matter, but Jordan's not going to be available for the first couple of games.
That's fine.
We're not going to get into the reasons why. We've dealt with it. It's behind us. Right. It's a team matter. I
don't understand why you can't say that. I don't understand that. It's like it insults our intelligence. Frankly,
yes,
it's frustrating to me personally. I don't like that.
But. Yes, so it just blows my mind. And then he just gets so mad about I can't believe you guys are asking these questions. Blah 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 blah. It's like
it's our job. I mean whatever. Yeah, exactly.
But the point is now there's all these rumors going. I've had somebody's like, oh, he for weed, and I'm like, see, this is exactly what happens when you don't address it. You get all these rumors about what have happened,
right?
And no one knows. Look, it was in a team matter. It wasn't a disciplinary thing. It wasn't an academic thing. It wasn't a drug related thing. It was. It's behind us now. We're good to go. Let's roll.
Right.
But he wants to do what he does.
Apparently there better be rumors out there than, facts and truth and whatever, but hey, it's all good. Andrew has a very loaded question. Is it Kelly or his assistants that are holding back the program? And he says, for example, Del Alexander.
I don't want to use the phrase holding back the program. I understand where he's coming from because I still want to say, listen, this is a program that has gone 43-8 the last 4 years. This is a team that's gone 33-5 the last 3, 34-5 if you include the opener. And those losses were to twice to Clemson, once to Alabama, right? Like this is Georgia on the road by 6. I mean, this is a program that's come a long way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like by saying it's holding them back, you're sort of right. because it's more about what's keeping them from taking that final leap is the way that I want to say it. Because
Sure.
I think it needs to be said. And again, Andrew, I'm getting into a bit of a semantic thing here, but I think it's important because if you say what's holding them back, it makes it seem like maybe they're not that good or whatever.
Right.
I look at it like this, right? Brian Kelly's brought this program a long way, and he's had a lot of assistant coaches that have played a great role in that, but he's the guy in charge. And a lot of the decisions he's made are the reasons why Notre Dame has gone from an irrelevant program with the occasional one or two good teams a decade to where now they're one of the 5 best teams in the country. And I don't think that's debatable. But there are still self-inflicted wounds, right? Self-imposed roadblocks in front of the program that are keeping them from that final step.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think some of these things in regards to not being more proactive with coaches that are clearly not getting the job done is problematic. Look, there's advantages to having Jeff Quinn on your staff. I'm not saying fire Jeff Quinn. I think Jeff Quinn brings a lot of value. I was speaking with someone this weekend, and I'm trying to remember who it was, but he was talking about how, one of the reasons Kelly loves Jeff Quinn is because Jeff Quinn apparently was great at putting game plans together back when Kelly was the play caller back at Cincinnati and Grand Valley. There's clearly value to what he brings to the table, but maybe you need to rethink what his role is on your football team. Maybe you make him the tackles tight ends coach and, bring somebody else in to be sort of the O-line coach that's going to focus on the interior, and you kind of go about that way, which is kind of what happened last year with Chris Watt.
Right.
And look what happened.
They were good.
So I think, or maybe you just make him the tackles coach, and then you have a tight ends coach, and maybe you do away with the guy that only coaches special teams. It's not a shot on Brian Poling. It's just more of a makeup of, are you making the best use of your 10 assistant coaches?
Right.
And so to me, it's not making those, why let Autry Denson ruin your running back depth chart for 4 years when it was clear after 1 or 2 years he just wasn't that guy. Yes, he was a good running back coach, but that's the easiest position to coach. You have to be able to recruit a running back.
Absolutely.
And
no
so
question.
That's kind of where I'm at with that. It's just those things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just why not make that change?
Yeah.
And or at least maybe move some things around. You've got to recognize that this is a problem, and his unwillingness to make the tough decisions. And look, every coach makes hires that aren't great. Urban Meyer hiring Everett Withers to be his defensive coordinator. He realized after 2 years, despite going 24-2, this is Kelly's problem. When he's winning, he's so unwilling to make changes.
Right.
It seems like he views moving on from a coach as if like an admission of failure, and he refuses to admit that he didn't do something perfectly. When it's like, dude, every coach does this, right? Nick Saban, during his great runs, has had to get rid of coaches that he hired, including coordinators, because they weren't getting the job done, right? He brought in Tosh, that I can't remember, Lupau or whatever his last name is, who's known as this great recruiter, brought him in. He was a great recruiter. Then he made him D-coordinator. That was a colossal failure, so he quickly moved on from it. Everett Withers, he brings him in. Ohio State goes 24-2. And then Everett Withers gets the head coaching job at James Madison. He didn't fire him. Does anybody in the world actually think that Everett Withers decided to leave Ohio State as the D coordinator, coaching for Urban Meyer, to take the James Madison head coaching job? No. If he had the option of going back to Ohio State, he would not have taken the James Madison head coaching job, right?
Exactly.
Can we all be honest about that, right? He hired Ed Warner and Tim Beck to be his co-o coordinators. That lasts like a year, right? And then he was like, yeah, this ain't getting it done, and he moves on. That's what great coaches do. Everyone makes mistakes of hires. The great coaches recognize it and move on quickly from it.
Sure.
And so that's, to me, where Brian Kelly has fallen short, and he needs to step it up. Because I think he's in that mode now, Vince, where he's made so many moves this offseason that are geared towards we're taking that final step. He's got to be all in, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where some of these moves have to come from. So if he's willing to do that, then I think that's the thing that's going to help him get over that final hump. And so I don't think it's holding the program back as much as it's, again, this is a total semantic thing to say. I'm arguing semantics. It's the thing, what is going to allow you to take that final step?
Mm-hmm.
It's being willing to make that final change. and give your young offensive coordinator the resources he needs. He needs the best of the best on the O-line coach. He needs a receiver coach that's going to get after it on the recruiting trail and coach kids up. He needs that. Give him those tools, because if you give Tommy Rees those tools, look what he's already doing on the recruiting trail.
Right.
As a 28, 29-year-old guy with no experience, he's getting after it. You and I are very optimistic about what he's going to do this year with this offense. Imagine what he could do with a top-flight offensive line coach and a receivers coach that's going to recruit his butt off and coach these young kids up.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you've had 5 receivers leave your football team since the end of the season. You've now had twice in the last 3 years, you've had a kid quit in the middle of the season at that position. Now, you can bash the kids all you want. That's fine. But when it's happening at one position,
over and over,
you have to be willing to look at it from a top-down problem. It's not like it happened here once and then it happened over here and then it happened over here. It's happening here, right here. And we have to be willing to say this is something that has to be fixed and be addressed.
Hey, Brian, we got a super chat.
We
did.
Want
to go down and
Patrick
grab that.
Barnes.
Yeah, man.
Patrick, thank you very, very much for the super chat, buddy. I appreciate that very, very much. One of our regulars. I love those.
Yes, absolutely. It says, how far of a drop in O-line play do you think will take place having to replace Fisher with Carmody? Haven't watched much tape on Carmody. Thanks for another great podcast as usual.
I like Michael Carmody. I think Michael Carmody's a pretty good football player. He's a redshirt sophomore now. I just don't know if Michael Carmody's a left tackle per se. But I'll tell you what, Vincent, and you had made this comment before too. I thought once he came into the game, he was the most physical of the 5 guys on the field.
He wasn't afraid to get after it. And that's huge. Right. That's when we're talking about this offensive line and this offensive line room being physical, being the most physical guy out there, I will take it. I will take that from him. Now, there's some technical stuff that he needs to clean up. And like you said, maybe he's not a natural left tackle, but he's going to be aggressive in everything that he does. And I can get on board with that. And if I'm a coach, I can work with that. Right. And so, is there going to be a drop off? Of course, there's going to be a drop off, because otherwise he would have been the starter. Right. I mean, that's just the way it is. Right. But the other thing is, we didn't see much of Fisher with this offensive line in a game situation. So, we don't have a whole lot to compare it to as far as like, here's our starting point and here's where we are now. Does that make sense? It's like, we they hadn't really established themselves as, this dominant group or this force of 5, right? So, is there going to be a drop off? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a drop off for sure, but we don't really know what that was to begin with, I don't think.
Well, we know what it could have been, but we only saw it for half, right? So it's kind of like the Marist injury. It's not like you lost a guy in the middle of the season.
Right.
You lost a guy before you played a game. And look, Michael Carmody, I graded as a 4-star recruit in the top. I'm looking at my breakdown of him now. 4-star recruit, top 200 player nationally with a 4.5-star upside. That's the upside of a top 50 guy. Michael was a guy that played basketball. He was a really good basketball player in high school. Him and his brother they played in the state. I think they played in the state championship, lost. I don't think it might have been the semifinal. I think it was at least a championship. But he was a really nimble kid, really athletic kid, but he put on a ton of weight fast. Like from a sophomore, junior, senior, he put on a ton of weight. And I think it took him a while to get used to moving with that big jump in weight. But by a senior year, he was playing better with it and those type of things. I think he's a good football player. Like I said, 4-star, top 200 kind of kid. He's playing a little bit earlier than I anticipated, because he's a kid that also needed a lot of technical work. And that's still true. I mean, we saw that on Sunday night. He's still a kid that needs a lot of technical work. That's my issue with him. It's my issue with Blake. It's my issue with Tosh Baker. They're guys that need a lot of technical work playing for an offensive line coach that hasn't necessarily shown me he can get those guys ready to play technically sound football. Because the reality is the technicians that Notre Dame had the last few years, Liam Eichenberg, Robert Hainsey, guys like that, they either showed up with that technique, like Jared Patterson, or those are guys that were working with Harry Heastand. So those are things that you look at and say, you need to be able to get him ready to go. I think Mike will be able to hold his own. I'd still consider, I think Michael should, has a legitimate chance to be in the top 5, right? But I would say, hey, you know what? If it was up to me, be bold, right? Like you have to be bold sometimes. Hey, Jarrett, we're gonna get you some snaps of left tackle in practice, see how you handle it. And I'd have put him to left tackle, and then put Zeke Correll at center, or let him and Kristofic battle out center, and I'm moving Carmody into left guard.
Yeah,
I would have considered doing something like that. They're not going to do that. I don't think they're willing to take that risk, unfortunately.
Well, they haven't.
That's what I would do.
We haven't known them in the past to disrupt more than one position generally if one guy goes down. Does that make sense? Like moving one guy from a starting position to the position that needs to be filled, and then that
they did last year. They moved a backup,
right,
starting center, which
right.
I mean, the 6 and the 7.5 backup to center,
right?
Yeah.
But so it's not their MO, is what we're saying. Right. Even though that might be the best case, it's just not their MO.
Yeah, so. But I think that the thing for me, Patrick, is the way that I look at it isn't necessarily what's the drop-off going to be, is can you have a good offensive line with Michael Carmody playing left tackle with the other pieces in place? And the answer to that is yes. You got to coach him up. He's a young kid, but yes, you can still have a good offensive line. Would it be as good as it would have been with Blake Fisher? No, because Blake Fisher's he's an elite talent.
Yeah, right. He's starting for a reason.
It can still be good. You just got to coach the kid up. That's the key.
Christopher Sally says, I would never advocate keeping a coach to retain commits, but that being said, if changes are made at offensive line and wide receiver coaches before signing day, are any decommits likely?
I don't think so. I think Tommy Rees has had a big enough role with those receivers that they'd still be able to keep them. Same thing with the offensive line. At the same time, I don't really plan on spending a lot of time talking about coaches being replaced in week 2, because even if Brian Kelly does make changes, which I think he should, it's not happening in week 2.
Right.
It's not going to happen. The reason he fired Brian Van Gordon in the middle of the season is because he needed to do it to save his football team. That's Jeff Quinn and Dell Alexander are not Brian Van Gorder. They're not toxic people that are going to cause you to lose your entire football team, which is what was happening with Brian Van Gorder.
Right.
That's not who they are. So this is your staff. This is the staff you rolled with. Go make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's the way I look at it. Go make it happen with this group, and then reevaluate things in the offseason.
And so just so everybody knows, I think that's kind of where we're going to stop the whole replacing coaches conversation for today, because that's kind of depressing, and it's week 2.
Well, I don't call it depressing. It's just not going to happen.
Right. And it's redundant. It's not necessary.
Right.
How about that? So anyway, I just want to throw that out there because there's other stuff we can get to.
Yes.
All right. Never Lost Roamer. Question for the mailbag. Is there a reason why you guys don't tell us what the point spread is when the Irish are playing? It's not important to us. So there's so much out there with betting and apps and things like that. You can find that information pretty much anywhere anymore. That's not hard to find information.
Go to NCAA, go to ESPN and look at the scoreboard, and it'll tell you what the spread is.
Right. But that's not really what we do. Like, we're not telling you who to bet on. We're not.
If you want advice on who to bet on, this isn't the show for you.
Right. Exactly.
We don't bet. I mean, we're not gamblers. I've never bet on a college football game before.
Yeah,
so
it's not something that we do. Yeah, this isn't. That's just not us. And look, I can tell you that the spread is 16.5 for this game, but that's not going to change the way that we analyze the game. We come up with predictions and things like that. It's just not really our thing. So there's plenty of betting podcasts out there. I mean, plenty of them. I'm sure that you could find them if that's your thing. If not, stick around. You might learn a little football.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
We definitely will learn football.
Right.
This is being humble. I have no such issues. That's not my nature. I'm working on it, but not in my nature.
Yeah, right. Jacob Hayden says, with all the injuries and having to move Watts to defense, should we start to worry? Also, is there not a better option already on the defense instead of moving Watts?
I mean, what are your thoughts, Vince? I don't think it's time to worry. I mean, look, Fisher and Marist were starters. The rest of these injuries were to backup guys. I mean, Paul Moala was your third rover. Again, was he going to play? Is he a good football player? Yes. Am I dismissing his injury? Not at all. Am I making it seem like Shane Simon's injury is not a big deal? Not at all.
Right.
But they were backups. So no, it's not time to worry. As you had mentioned yesterday, Vince, now the margin for error is super thin,
Right.
and you can't really sustain a whole lot of other injuries. The other part too is they did happen early enough to where you have a lot of time to get these guys ready to go.
Right.
And I think that's a positive. Regarding, is there not a better option than Xavier Watts? Well, clearly the defensive staff didn't think so. I mean, look, this isn't a situation where Tommy Rees walked in and said, "Hey guys, you got some injuries. Do you guys want Xavier Watts?" That's not how this conversation.
They didn't put him on the block. He wasn't on the block.
You're right. Like, I'll trade him for future considerations in a Domino's large Domino's pizza. It's not how that conversation went. This is Marcus Freeman saying, "Hey, we need some help, and that's the guy that I want."
Yeah.
So and Brian Kelly is the one that kind of went to Xavier and said, "Hey, this is what's going to happen. Or are you okay with this?" And Xavier, being a team player, said, "Yeah." Although again, I don't know if it's a move that they're super thrilled with.
Right.
But I was also told his first practice, he balled. I mean, and he was working with the varsity team. It wasn't like they threw him down on scout team.
They better not.
He's working. I mean, he's getting reps, and that's always been my stance, Vince. If you're going to move a kid, move positions for a kid, better play him.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't move a kid and let him sit and go on the scout team. If you're going to move a kid in the middle of the season, he better flip and play.
Yes.
And I expect them to see Xavier. Now, will he be able to handle that position? I don't know. And I don't expect them to use him at Rover like they used Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They're not going to play him as like a linebacker. He's not going to be stacking inside the box. At least I don't think he will. He's going to be out in coverage.
Yeah, he's going to be,
He's going to be blowing up perimeter screens. He's going to be covering slot receivers. He's going to be doing stuff like that. And so as part of that role, could he thrive at it? Sure. Is it going to take him some time to get adjusted to the technique and the defense and the calls? Of course. But, what frustrated me about the whole thing is I don't mind moving Xavier to defense. Xavier was a heck of a defense player. Clark Lee tried for months to convince Xavier to play defense for him. Like, the defensive staff has been like begging for the time where they have an excuse to go pick Xavier Watts off the offense. That's just a fact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember that during his recruitment.
Yeah, this is their. I mean, Clark Lee. I remember sitting with Clark Lee in his office talking ball with him. When we would do our summer things, talking about how we really would love to have Xavier on offense. You know what I mean, or on defense. And so, obviously, wasn't going to happen. But now they got their chance. So I mean, they think this kid can play defense. I hope he does well. But the thing that bothers me is Brian kept about, he's an explosive athlete. And I'm like, explosive athlete that you couldn't make time to get on your kickoff coverage team, your punt coverage team, or your wide receiver core. Like, you had no use for an explosive athlete like that at receiver. You had no use for an explosive athlete that on the kickoff team, or the punt cover team, or the punt return team, or the kick return team. But he's going to go to defense and be a dominant Rover for you. Okay, buddy. Sure. Whatever you say. We got a super chat down there.
We do have a super chat from Jay.
Jay, appreciate that very, very much.
Thank you very much. He says, Coach Dell's recruiting under Rees the last 2 years compared with Chip Long is night and day better. Something to think about.
Strongly disagree. Let's not forget the recruiting with Chip Long involved a class that had Kevin Austin, Braden Lindsey, Lawrence Keys, Joe Wilkins, and Micah Jones. All right. His also recruiting class, Chip was here when they got Xavier Watts and Jordan Johnson. Also, do you know who the offensive coordinator was when Lorenzo Styles and Deion Colsey committed to Notre Dame? Do you know who the coordinator was? It was Chip Long. They committed 2 years ago. They committed to Notre Dame the weekend that Notre Dame beat USC in 2019. So that's just inaccurate, Jay, with all due respect. That's inaccurate. Bronx Indy fan. Look at his avatar.
I was going to say, the avatar.
I'm digging it. Digging it. Love it. I love it. I think he feels bad that he thought I was mad at him last show for the hotel comment, so he's kind of making it up. So we're good. We're definitely good now. You got the IB thing in your avatar. We're aces.
That's hilarious.
Can this injury situation make us better in the future with recruiting and developing younger players? I'm trying to be an optimist, excited to see Marcus Freeman deal with this adversity. Yeah, I mean, look.
Yes.
I think this is a great point is you got to get Prince Collie going now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, this is an opportunity for, and I'm not saying that like they weren't going to coach him up, but he now is going to get a ton of reps.
Well, because there wasn't a clear path for him to get on the field. There was a lot of
good players ahead of him, right?
Yeah, right.
And now you got to play him.
Yeah.
Does it pay off this year? I don't know, Vince. Could it pay off next year? Definitely.
Right.
Definitely. So, I mean, same thing with Xavier Watts. I mean, look, if you're the defensive staff, you're saying to yourself, this is a blessing in disguise because he's going to play Rover for us now. But now our goal is going to be to love on Xavier now.
Right.
And then we can convince him to go play safety in the spring. When Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler show up.
Yeah.
We're going to convince him to go play safety, which is ultimately where I think they'd want him.
Yeah.
So if you're the defensive staff, it's not ideal now. It's not. But it's one of those things where, hey, life hands you lemon, make some lemonade. You know what I mean? So, and that's what they're going to do. So they get Xavier over there. If Xavier's buys into playing defense and stays at Notre Dame, neither of those things are certainties right now. This is going to be a plus because essentially Xavier's going to be – he's a freshman right now for all intents and purposes.
Oh, absolutely.
He's right now because the last year's COVID year didn't hurt. He still has 3 years of eligibility after this. You just added a safety recruit who's a really good athlete and a really good football player.
I could see him at safety for sure.
I can see – that's the thing we said about Xavier, Vince, all along.
Yeah.
He's a freaking football player.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you want that. You want guys like that, Vince. You know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I have a harder time seeing him at Rover, but that's where they need depth right now. So I get it. That's fine. And you're giving him a taste of what the defense is, and he's going to learn the defense and all of those different things. I could very easily see him starting at safety next year.
They don't view Kari G and Justin Walters and those guys as options right now. Right. You know, at the Rover spot. So, you know, I think this could definitely be a good thing for them in the future.
Yeah, we got a few more super chats, Brian.
Chief Brody. The IB post-game reaction show is second only to Friday free-for-all. Well, I'm going to try to change that, Vince. That's my goal. I want to make the post-game show the best thing around.
Well, you know, we were it was at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning when we were doing the last one. So
we got done in the 3:20 is when we wrapped up the last show.
Or early.
Yeah. Yep.
It won't be the case this week, which is good.
We got some more down here. Just Your Ordinary Joe. This week we get kicked in the crotch with some adversity. I say we follow the BK 24-hour rule: a win, save it for a day; a loss, grieve it for a day. That's it. Tomorrow, game on. We focus forward. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what we're trying to do here. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
We can continue to harp on the fact that this, that, and the other thing's happening. But look, let's go make it work, right? Like that's the key. That's what happens in football. I mean, 2015, if you remember, you know that was a pretty good Notre Dame team. And if they didn't have Brian Van Gorder D coordinator, that team would have been really flipping good. By the time the second game of the season was over with, they had lost their starting quarterback, their starting running back, their starting tight end, their starting nose tackle, because remember, Jerron Jones got hurt in fall camp. Their anticipated starting nickel, because Sean Crawford got hurt in fall camp. And there was one other injury that's escaping me right now. But those were some crucial injuries. I mean, you lost Malik Zaire, Torian Folson, Jerron Jones, Sean Crawford, and Durham Smythe before the second game of the season was over with. That team ended up being pretty flipping good, right? They lost Maris Lewifau and Blake Fisher. Those are big losses. But this is a team that, in my opinion, is capable of overcoming those losses. And this week is going to be the first step to seeing it. And sometimes things like this can galvanize a football team, Vince. You know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, hey, because everything was going great for Notre Dame this offseason, right? And this kind of goes back, you know, Joe, to Bronx's chat question. And Joe's kind of, you know, these two things are kind of, to me, going hand in hand. And by the way, I want to interject real quick. Joe last week had set our record for our biggest super chat because he gave some money to Irish Breakdown, but it was kind of as a super chat. That number was tied yesterday. Ooh. So just saying somebody equaled that. But sometimes in football, when things are going well, you're a confident team.
Sure.
You've had a clean offseason, real clean offseason, like no big injuries, no big like scandals. Like this is a really clean offseason, right? Things are going great for you. You're feeling really good about yourself. Sometimes this kind of adversity can then give you that hard edge that maybe you didn't have when things were going great.
Makes sense.
Right? It gives you that, okay, you know what? They're disrespecting us with rankings. They're saying we don't have a chance to do this. You know, everybody's, you know, we lost this guy and this guy and this guy, and everybody's dismissing. They're writing us off already.
Right.
This is when your team becomes like really connected. And if there is the leadership that you and I think there is on this football team, then I think this is something that's going to become a galvanizing force for this football team. That's not spin.
Right.
That's not, hey, let's make the most of it. That's just from my experience with well-led football teams. This is something that can happen. And we've seen Brian Kelly had some teams that have injuries where they self-destructed, 2014. And we've seen seasons where they've had some big injuries where it just kind of brought that team together.
Sure.
And we're going to find out which one that's going to be this year. We have one more super chat down here from John A1. Happy Friday, IB. What do you expect to see with this team as far as growth on both sides of the ball by the first game in October?
Ooh,
it's a good one.
That's actually a really good one. Offensively, I just want to see them obviously get the running game going. I want to see that to be more consistent, which will allow them to be more balanced from a statistical standpoint. You know what I mean? Because they were balanced from a run pass, percentage, but they just weren't very successful in the run game. So I want to see that part get better. And then just continue with what you're doing in the pass game. I'm cool with the way things are flowing there. But I mean, I want to see them keep going in that direction, but that's what I want to see offensively. Defensively, consistency, right? Consistency start to finish. Again, we only have one game under our belt, watching this team, and that's the big question mark going into game 2. Now, once you're going into October, you're going to have 4 or 5 games under your belt.
Really good tests.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to learn a lot about this defense, and I don't think the consistency thing is going to be as much of an issue as it is going into game 2.
Right?
Well,
you hope it isn't.
Right.
Because October 1st is leading right into the Cincinnati game. I mean, it's the day before the Cincinnati game. So you'll have played Purdue and Wisconsin before then.
Yeah. So it's just staying consistent and then seeing this group work well together, right? Because there's going to be some new faces in new places. And seeing how that all gels and works together. And hopefully everybody's, pointing in the right direction by the time they get to October.
For me, I want to see more physicality up front on offense. That's what I want to see. I don't expect this offensive line to ever look like it did last year. That's not the goal. That should never have been the expectation. And if anybody expected that, I think they were either unreasonable expectations or they were expectations that were built on trying to set it up so you could criticize Jeff Quinn when they didn't meet that standard, right? That's what I think. The two, those are the two options as far as I can see. But as we said all summer, but that doesn't excuse not being physical. There's enough talent there, and the schedule is soft enough on defense. Because let's be honest about something. Outside of that 2-game stretch against Wisconsin and Cincinnati, who has a good defense and Notre Dame's going to play?
Right.
Notre Dame's offensive line played awful against Florida State. Awful. They scored 41 points. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
If they're just average, Notre Dame scores 50 against Florida State.
Easily.
Well, I think they can get to average. It doesn't take a whole lot.
Sure.
So that's the thing for me is it's just the physicality. That's the big thing for me with Coach Quinn is get this group playing hard. And if they're playing hard and use Michael Carmody, use Kane Madden, get those guys being physical, turn Josh Lugg loose. Jared Patterson is going to continue to shake off the rust. The kid missed the whole spring. He wasn't going to look like an All-American in the opener, right? That's the deal.
Yeah.
But he's got to by the time you get to October 1st, which is the premise of John's question, he needs to be back in good form, right? And he kind of started slow last year too, and by the time that you got to the middle of the season, he was playing pretty well. So maybe he's just one of those guys that's a slow starter for some reason. Yeah. That's the key for me is those guys got to be physical. I love the skill at receiver. I love the skill at tight end. I love the skill at running back. They're in position. Kevin Baum goes down. Hey, you know what? Get Kane Barong ready to go. That kid can ball too, right?
Absolutely.
Logan Diggs is going to be back.
Third tight end.
No question. Yeah. Logan Diggs going to be back.
Yes.
Losing Lawrence Keys stinks because they weren't using him correctly.
I agree.
They didn't use him correctly against Florida State, and the receiver still balled out, right? Now, I'm not saying it's okay. No big deal. Lawrence Keys is gone, right? Whatever. I know people say that. I get tired of that. Just because the guy hasn't been used doesn't mean he can't play.
Yeah.
Right. And people that say that were the same people like, oh, Phil Jakovic sucks and he can't play. And oh, yeah, he's pretty freaking good. Lawrence Keys is really freaking good. They should have used him better, but they didn't. Right. And they still were really good in the opener. Right. There are still talented players there. As long as you right the ship now, you're going to be fine. So there's plenty of talent there. Love Jack Cohn. I think Sunday kind of confirmed, Vince, what we've been saying about him for a while. This kid's a great point guard quarterback.
Exactly.
Now it's just up to the line. And this is why I've pointed out the 2018 season. It's important to say, look, do I think Jeff Quinn should be the O-line coach of Notre Dame? No. We'll flat out say it right now. No. I think there were better options then. I think there are better options now. Does that mean that Jeff Quinn sucks and can't get this line going? No, it doesn't. And we've seen this. I would argue that Notre Dame didn't look as bad against Florida State as they looked against Ball State in Game 2 of 2019 season or 2018 season. Would you disagree with that? Mm-hmm. When they were replacing McGlinchey and they were replacing Nelson, and then Kramer was moving from tackle to guard, and Robert Hainsey was a true salt. And I thought they were terrible against Ball State, way worse than they were against Florida State. By the 4th game of the year against Wake Forest, they were playing really good football. Right. By the 5th game of the year, they looked dominant against Stanford. That was a 9-win Stanford team. They dominated Stanford that game. And that was a Jeff Quinn line. Now, they didn't play that well the rest of the year, but that's also because the Stanford game is when they lost Alex Bars, who was their best player by far in the first 5 games. And to me was playing like an All-American up to that point before his injury. So we've been here before with Coach Quinn.
Sure.
And I can be critical of him, and I always will be, but at the same time, we also have to admit that we've seen this before, and he got his line going.
Absolutely.
Right? And that was without Chris Watt. Okay? It was. So I expect the line to get better. Will they be as good as they should be? No. Can they be good enough for this team to score a lot of freaking points? Absolutely.
Right.
And that's the key for me. And defensively, it's just clean stuff up. I got no problem with what Marcus Freeman did up until the point that they called off the dogs. I loved the game plan. I loved the versatility. I loved everything they did. You just made mistakes. Right. 89-yard touchdown run, guy slants in the wrong direction, and the safety whiffs. Clean it up.
Right.
That's a big thing for me, John.
We got a bunch of we got a super sticker. We got 3 super chats to get to.
I'm scrolling. There's a lot going on. I love it. All right. Jay says, sorry, we already got to that one.
Yep. I think Connor would be the next one, or the super sticker.
Yep. I'm trying to find. Yeah, we're getting through all these. Okay. Sheldon Hager with the super sticker, the 1999. Thank you very much for that, Sheldon. I appreciate that very, very much. Sheldon also just recently signed up at Irish Breakdown and joined the Booster Club at Irish Breakdown.
Sweet.
So, appreciate that very, very, very much. Connor Patton, Vince's buddy.
Yeah.
Happy Friday, gentlemen. Good luck with high school lockdown, Vince. I just started a 30-year sentence myself.
Oh, does that mean he's not a stay-at-home dad anymore?
That's why he moved to, I think, New Hampshire, right? Correct.
Is he a teacher? Is that what's happening?
Something, yeah.
Good luck, dude.
Got a couple other here. Jay with the super chat, another super chat. Thank you for that, Jay. Appreciate it. According to 247's Alan True, Cardinal Tate has changed his commitment date, does not have a new date set up. Can't be bad news with the Ohio State momentum. Yeah, so I've been feeling all along that Notre Dame was going to be the pick. The last week and a half, my intel's been going in a different direction. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because he was going to commit in early October. And based on what I had been hearing from some national people and definitely from people down in Florida, sounds like he was leaning towards Ohio State, so this is not necessarily a bad thing. Mike Gardner with another super chat. Thank you, Mike. No questions. Just wanted to say thanks for making traveling from sales call to sales call entertaining and educational. And I like that combination that he said. Mike, I really appreciate that. I do, because that's the only way this is going to last, right? If this is just a stale, we're just talking ball and we're real technical and it's no fun.
Right.
Like when Vince says things in the middle of a night show that could maybe get him fired and locked up and are going to get calls from children's services, that's kind of fun. That's entertaining for me,
For you. Yeah.
Not for Vince. Vince is like checking his email every 2 seconds, just waiting on the principal to hit him up. And D-Rock says, Connor Patton, I was paroled after 31 years. Feels good. Best wishes. So,
because D-Rock said he was a principal.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, so he wasn't paroled. He was the warden.
Yeah, I know, right? He was the one in charge, man.
Yeah.
Walking around with the iPad.
I have always had a great deal of respect for high school teachers because I couldn't do it. I'd end up in lockup. Some kid backtalk me, and next thing you know, some things get thrown across the room.
Oh, the temptation, my friend. Let me tell you.
Put a kid in a stone cold stunner, just you know what I mean,
Right.
like right in the middle of class. Like, oh, what? Good night.
Well, and it's never the kids. It's never the kids that are like 6'5", 250 that are up in your grill. It's always the kids that are like
because they know you can't hit them.
They're like 5'2", 105.
They know you can't
5
hit
pounds
them.
of nickels. It's like it's just like, dude, do you have any idea?
Yeah.
What would happen if we weren't in this school? Just talking to yourself.
No, do you see the thing that Mike put up?
Uh-huh.
So it's like, that would be some serious Fight Club type of weird craziness, right? So am I Tyler Durden? Is that he's Edward Norton's character? I'm Brad Pitt's character. That's definitely ought to be. And if you say anything other than that, then
it's not the other way around.
You're being no. I'm definitely Brad Pitt's character. Are you kidding me? And you better agree with me.
Yeah. How could I disagree with that?
All right. Old Grim said, I wanted to get this up there. The doctor said yesterday that I can start to work my way back to normal. Go Irish. That's great. Awesome. Great news. Great news, Grim.
Awesome.
And I'm assuming that back to normal for Old Grim means the day that he's able to get back out on the course.
Yeah,
the
right.
golf course.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking. So we got one more. Another one from Sheldon Hager. I know Brian doesn't mess with betting as their spread, but Vince, what do you think about the spread this week? The money line is garbage.
16.5, I feel is low. 2+ touchdown, 2 touchdowns and a field goal, right? I would be upset. I was upset last week because obviously they didn't cover, and I thought that the number was low. It was at 7, I believe. I think that Notre Dame should cover. I think that if I was going to bet on this game, which I have not, I would take Notre Dame at the minus 16.5. Mm-hmm. So there's your betting line for the day for everybody out there that enjoys that.
If you bet and it doesn't work, don't come back to us.
Right.
Because we're saying we're not gambling experts.
Because guess what? Yes. I bet last week and I lost my money. So there you go. I am not an expert.
We have a couple very smart people in our chat, Vince. A lot, but Chief Brody is 100% correct, and so is Mike Gardner. So,
oh man,
yeah. And then Martin Demo. So we're going to get back to football in a second. Martin Demo says, I know a lot of small peeps in MMA that are chilling but dangerous. But that's the difference right there. We didn't say small people can't fight. It's the small mouthy guy.
Exactly.
Because he's hiding behind his mouth. The guys that I've always said, the guys I ever got worried about in clubs. The guy that was like running his mouth behind and his buddy's holding back. I guarantee if I really wanted to fight somebody, you aren't holding me back from fighting that guy. Right. It's that mouthy guy that's like, 208-pound guys are holding him back. The guy that I got worried about is just the guy that didn't say a word and he just came at you.
Right. Exactly.
This guy's got danger in his eyes. That's the guys you get afraid of. Like, hey, look, guys, I'm just trying to do my thing. But you cross that line, we're not going to talk about it. It's just going to be, it's going to be a 3-step process. Me getting up, me hitting you in the face, and you hitting the ground. That's the 3 steps of this whole thing, right? Those are the guys I'd get worried about. Or they're going to put some hold on me where, like, I'm like in a pretzel, like, screaming for my mama, right? Those are the guys that I would get worried about. But, no, we're talking about the little mouthy kid that knows you can't do anything about it.
Those are the ones that I deal with daily.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a teacher. Yeah. RJG Irving with another super chat. For Rees to be taken seriously at 28, he needs to make the staff changes, not BK. But that's not how it works. He has
no control over that.
Tommy Rees can't fire a soul. Now, he can go to Brian Kelly. But that's one of the things that got Chip Long fired. As Chip Long went to Brian Kelly and said, we need to make some changes. And Brian Kelly said, you're correct. You're fired. Right? So, yeah, I mean, it's got to be the head coach.
From the top. Yeah, it's got to be from the top.
Now,
it's his staff.
Will Tommy Rees can Tommy Rees go to Brian Kelly? No, but again, that's not a position that Tommy Rees should be put in.
Right.
He shouldn't. He's 28. He's smart. He's got a bright future. He shouldn't be in a position where he's got to go tell Brian Kelly that these two guys that work for Brian Kelly need to be let go.
Right.
Now, should Brian Kelly ask his opinion on it? Yes. But the reality is Brian Kelly is not going to get rid of Jeff Quinn.
Right.
He's not. Del Alexander, I don't know. But that shouldn't be Tom Rees. And I understand where you're coming from. I do, RJ. But That just can't be Tommy Rees's responsibility.
And I do take Tommy Rees seriously. I think he's doing everything in his power to be a successful offensive coordinator. He's recruiting well. It's clear that he's got his pulse on or his finger on the pulse of this team and what they can do well offensively. I think he's doing a great job. I do take him very seriously. So, I'll say that.
Yeah. So let's get back to some questions, Vince. You're at the top.
Yeah, so at the beginning, Tommy Gunn's asked if anybody could you could listen on an app or whatever to the Notre Dame game. I said it was Audacity. I misspoke apparently, and I apologize. I heard another radio host who works at my station call it Audacity so I thought that's what it was. It's Odyssey, and Paul Kinglin corrected me, and I appreciate that.
Are you talking about?
So Odyssey is an app where you can listen to the Notre Dame game on live.
I just thought you misproperly used the word Audacity because I saw people like I'm going for 5 minutes and Vince is misusing words.
No. Odyssey is the name of it, apparently. The radio host called it Audacity, and I had never seen it written, so I went with what he said.
So what you're saying is you're passing the buck. It's not your fault.
100%. Fault. Always passing the buck. Absolutely. No question. Okay. And if you knew who I was talking about, you would understand why that buck is being passed. Not the first or the last time. Ty B says, Vince, it's Mailbag Friday, baby. Go Irish.
That was close to singing, Vince. Be careful. We got a couple super chats.
Yeah, hit them.
John A1, did Foskey play well enough to warrant extra attention from opponents? How do you think he'll handle that? How much did the FSU line improve in 2021? Do you have some thoughts on that, Vince?
Well, I can tell you that anybody that's watching the film noticed number 7 in white, no question. So will he offer more attention? I don't think, not after one game.
No, and I think he played well, but not well enough to be like, oh wow, we've got to double that guy. Especially since in the second half they kind of pulled the reins back on him.
Absolutely. So no, I don't think he's going to get more. And as far as the FSU line improving, yeah, they improved. They were better than they were last year in one game. They were better than they were last year. But again, they could really only go up. So I guess I'm not overly surprised by that. I mean, they still got worked in the first half. I mean, there were an awful lot of white jerseys in the backfield in the first half.
Yeah, so, they were having quarterback parties almost the entire first half.
Right. So did they improve? Yes. But again, they were pretty darn bad last year.
I'll tell you what I liked about them this year. They battled.
Yeah.
The Florida State line, they battled. They're not real good. Notre Dame, when they were turned loose, Notre Dame dominated that game.
Sure.
I mean, exactly. They just did.
I agree.
But that's because we expect Notre Dame to have one of the best defensive lines in the country.
Right.
They battled. And that's what makes this Florida State team. That tells me that Mike Norvell is already he's
changing the culture. I mean,
yes. Now we're going to learn if it's completely changed by these next couple games. Like, how do they handle losing to Notre Dame? How do they handle, hey, well, boy, we had a chance, we lost that game. Do they then turn that into tackling fuel the next couple weeks? Right. That's going to tell me that, hey, they've turned the corner. But the fact that they did not back down in this game, they were down 38-20. Florida State 2 years ago would have folded up shop and bounced, basically mentally. They would have quit. Yes. Notre Dame would have put 2 more touchdowns on the game.
Yep.
This team did not quit. They battled their butts off.
And they had every opportunity when they didn't get that 4th down and they turned it over on the 30-yard line. Notre Dame went in and scored a touchdown. I thought that the game was over at that point. Yep. I really did. I thought Florida State was like, well, we gave it our best shot, and that was it. They didn't. And that speaks battled to the head coach.
Right.
To me. So, yeah, I agree.
There's
another super chat in there.
Right Brian. Below it. Yeah. From Kevin O'Neill. This is an interesting one. Do you guys think Notre Dame would have beaten Florida State had Pine played start to finish? What about Buckner? Thanks, fellas. Why don't you take a crack down this? Because I have a very interesting opinion you're probably not going to agree with.
It's very interesting because I thought that Jack Cohn played very, very well in this game. And any less from Jack Cohn, and they may not win that game. But if it's different quarterbacks, maybe the game plan is a little bit different too. And so you have to take that into account. You can't ask Drew Pine or Tyler Buckner to go in and do what Jack Cohn did because that's not their game. So I don't know the answer to that because I don't think the offense would have looked the same. So I guess I'm kind of copping out on the answer. Do I think they still could have won with either one of those guys? Yes, but it wouldn't have looked the same. So maybe. I don't know.
I'm going to say something crazy.
Okay.
Had Drew Pine played, and again, I don't know about Tyler Buckner. We haven't seen enough of him.
Sure.
Had Drew Pine played quarterback, Notre Dame would have not gone to overtime against Florida State. They would have won in regulation, probably by more than 3 points. Here's why I say that. They never would have jumped on Florida State the way that they did. They never would have called off the dogs. They'd have had to stick with their game plan, and then they'd have pulled away. They would have pulled away in the fourth quarter.
Right.
That's what would have happened.
That's interesting.
They wouldn't have changed they wouldn't have got conservative once with an 18-point lead. They wouldn't have got conservative on defense. The defense would have stayed attacking, would have forced a couple more stops before they called off the dogs, and the offense would have pulled away a quarter later. They'd have pulled away with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter instead of 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Had they not called the dogs off, right? Because I'm looking at how the game played out.
Sure, yeah, right.
Had they not called the dogs off, they'd have beat Florida State by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Like if they would have gone out that next series on defense and still attacked, Florida State's not scoring. Remember, I think Florida State only scored on one of their first 3 possessions, and that was on a long touchdown pass on the third down. Right? They were dominating in the third quarter as well until they got out of their game plan.
Yeah.
Had they not got, Jack Cohn went 8 of 8 for 164 yards and 3 freaking touchdowns in the third quarter.
Right.
And then they called off the dogs. So had they not called off the dogs, I think they would have pulled away late. So I think that's why. So that's kind of a weird answer, but like I don't think they would have pulled as far ahead as they did. It would have been much more competitive game for longer.
That makes sense.
And they would have pulled away in the fourth quarter.
That makes sense.
Now I hope the lesson from that is you got a potentially phenomenal offense here. 18 points against a Power 5 team is not run out the clock mode. It's let's bury them mode. It's let's hang 60 this week. That's the mentality Brian Kelly has to get in his head. He has to get that in his head. 18-point wins against Florida State ain't getting it done. You got to bury them. And now you do it in a way that doesn't make you look like an a-hole. You don't fake punt it when you're up 45-20.
Right.
You don't call a reverse throwback up 38-20. But you come out, Tommy, keep running your offense. Keep running RPOs. Keep getting the ball downfield. Because third quarter's fair. I've always believed third quarter's fair game. Unless you're playing like a team that's just god awful and it's like 50-something to nothing, third quarter's fair game. But even then you put your backups in the third quarter and you let them run the offense. Well,
it's running the offense. Like if you're a basketball coach, you're not taking threes, but you're running the offense to get layups. You know what I mean? And if they can't stop running that's what you do. You know what I mean? And I agree with you completely on that. So we've hit the witching hour for me. So I've got to hit the road.
Where are you at, Vince?
So we had so many super chats. I didn't get past 12:35.
Oh, wow. We're going to lose about 20 minutes worth of questions.
Yeah.
Is there a really good one between that and 12:58 that you can pull up? Let me see. Before you take off?
Sure. Here's a good one. Anybody else have a game day playlist? My kids now know the routine and kick it off during breakfast. I love that.
That's awesome.
I think that's really cool. I think that's really
I don't have
cool.
a game day playlist.
I don't either. I have too much going on to have a game day playlist. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Now I had a game day playlist when I was coaching. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It was a lot of Tupac, a lot of Wu-Tang, some Nas. It was a lot of that kind of stuff. But it was but not now. Anything else there in that time, Vince?
Here we go. Maybe I don't know if you can speak to this or not. Hey Bob 157.
This is a good one, yeah.
What do you think about Steve Angeli's start to the season? Is he showing significant improvement since the last game film that you saw of him?
Yeah, that's a good one, Vince. I appreciate you.
That's where I'll peace out at this point. Okay. But everybody, hey man, game day tomorrow. Enjoy it, and then
Vince will be back tomorrow because post game.
Absolutely,
we'll be back after
make sure you check out the post game podcast because we're gonna have some good stuff for you guys. So I will see everybody tomorrow after the game.
All right, so I really like this question from Hey Bob. So here's what I've seen from Steve Angeli. He's filled out his frame a little bit. His pocket footwork has improved, which is allowing him to use his mobility a little bit more effectively. I think the ball's coming out of his hand a little bit better. It's got a little bit more zip on it this year. His decision-making has improved, which is something I expected to happen because he's only had 6 career varsity starts before this, before he actually didn't have any varsity starts going into last season. And he only played 6 games. So he's shown decision-making improvement. He's shown a more aggressive nature of attacking at quarterback this year. The concern I still have that continues to need to be improved upon is His arm still isn't a cannon, which I don't care. Neither is Jack Cohn's, and you know how high I am on him. His ball placement still isn't where I want it to be. That's an area where he needs to continue to work. I mean, he's completing passes, but completing passes in high school is a little different. So I'd still would like to see him just work a little bit on ball placement. But overall, in just about every part of his game, he's either improved by a little bit or by a decent amount since last season. But the thing that I've really liked is his pocket footwork has gotten a lot better. I definitely like that part of his game, but he's definitely gotten better. I'm going to regrade him, a lot of these guys after the season, based on what again, it's early yet, so I want to see him continue this, but based on what I've seen so far, I'm going to bump his grade up to a 4-star grade. He was a 3.5-star kid with a 4-star upside. I'm going to bump that 3.5-star up to a 5-star, or 4-star if he continues this improvement. But he's looking more and more like a top 250 caliber player right now. He wasn't last year. He's still got, again, finish. It's just been a couple games. But so far, I really like what I've seen from Steve. Is he a top 100 guy? No. Is he a future star? I don't see that. I see him as a Jack Cohn caliber player, which, as you know, I think you can win with if you put talent around him. And the talent in that class is really good. Really good. So we're going to lose a lot of questions from about the 12:30 mark to 12:58 mark because I got bumped going down to grab the super chats and Vince isn't around. So if you had a question in there that we missed, please resubmit it if you can, and we'll answer it. But I'm going to go right into some more questions here. And Mr. Hewtown referring to the offensive linemen, all the linemen are 4 stars. That should be plug and play up there. Should be. Agree. Ty B asks, why doesn't Tommy Rees call wide receiver screens much? I feel like Braden Lindsey would be ideal for such a play call. Well, number one, it was just one game. He didn't really have Braden Lindsey last year. And so I don't think we can – he did call a screen for him in one of the few games he played last year. So he called a jet sweep. He didn't do – I think he was kind of setting that up, but the looks weren't there. They did call some receiver screens. It was part of a concept where what Notre Dame does is, number one, they had RPOs where it was just the little now screens, and Florida State played that really aggressively. The other screen that they did was on a play where they actually run like a swing pass to the back, a swing screen to the back, so the lineman to the left would release and kind of be lead blockers on a swing pass, so the running back just kind of bubbles from the backfield. And then to the right, they're running like an inside, kind of like a quick tunnel screen, where the one receiver blocks out, the outside receiver comes in, and then the lineman to the right kind of get upfield and create a tunnel to run through, right? So it's called tunnel screen. And your quarterback has to read it pre-snap and go to one direction. He had Kevin Austin would have probably had a big play on that, but the read, however, he made the right decision to go to the swing screen, and Chris Tyree got like 9 or 10 yards on it. So I agree. I would like to see more of that, but I don't know if last week was necessarily the week for that because Florida State was playing pretty tight coverage, and they were, when they saw blocking from the receivers, they were flying up. What I would have liked to have seen from that, however, is I would have liked to see him use that aggressiveness to his advantage and do like a little pump fake on the now screen and then take a shot downfield. I would have liked to have seen that. But again, the concern is you weren't getting a ton of time to throw the ball in those games. So I don't know if Tom, this is just pure conjecture. Obviously, I haven't talked to him about this, but because I don't talk to him about things, but I don't know if he felt comfortable doing something that required that kind of deep shot. That would have been my issue. But look, we saw some screens. And of course, the one running back screen they had was very effective. But I don't know if the perimeter screens to receivers would have been incredibly effective just because of how aggressive Florida State was coming up once they saw perimeter blocking. Irish for life, I'm sorry you're not feeling good, buddy. Definitely get better. Appreciate you still being part of the show even though you're not feeling good today. Mr. Hewtown says, watched some highlights of Toledo versus Norfolk State, and Toledo was tiny. We have the athletes and size to win this game by 30. They have the athletes and size to win this game by 30. There's no question about it. I just don't believe that not winning by 30 means Notre Dame's not good or whatever. This is a Toledo team that's got some speed. they can play, and they're very well coached. Should Notre Dame still dominate? Yes, of course. We talked about this yesterday. But this is a quality football team. To me, I think this is I predict there's a couple good teams in the MAC this year, but I think Toledo's the best. That would be my prediction for that one. John Keevers, with the linebacker movement, Kaiser cross-training, Colley's role accelerated, Watt's working. Will Freeman have to simplify the scheme, not have as many looks as we saw against Florida State? No, I think if anything, you actually accelerate the variety of looks, because what you have what I would say to do is keep the diversity of formations and looks, but you're going to have to simplify the calls you make out of them. I think the danger can be you limit some of that diversity. Well, if you're going to limit your formational diversity or your alignment diversity, then you need to up your play call diversity, or they're just going to figure out what you're doing and pick you apart. So I would actually like to see them continue being multiple with how they line up, but just maybe simplify some of the looks out of, some of the calls out of those looks is what I would do. Liam Burke says he's currently watching this podcast in math class right now. I can't say that I feel bad about that. I love it. Absolutely love it. Curtis Hughes says some of our fan base was completely bashing Mackenzie Milton on Facebook. Like, really ugly talk kind of blows my mind. That's unfortunate. And we have those. Notre Dame has those. They do. And I don't like it. And we booted a couple people off of the Irish Breakdown Facebook page because I'm all for being critical, but when you start getting disrespectful like that, it's just no place for that. Not on any site that I run. Tommy Gunn says, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Milton the one trash talking Notre Dame in 18 for making the playoffs? That's a whole lot different than some of the stuff I saw on Facebook about Mackenzie Milton, because I did see some of that stuff. It's one thing to trash talk. It's another thing to show another lack of class. But what's he supposed to say? No, Notre Dame deserves to be in. He thought his team should have been in the playoff, and he thought they should have been in over Notre Dame. He was wrong, but I get it. I don't hold any grudges for him. Bruce Sherr says, I picked Notre Dame to win 35-17. Expect Kelly to insert Pine and Buckner to play the fourth quarter so they can take turns handing off to a running back. Hope I'm wrong. Yeah, I would be disappointed by the score prediction, or the score and that last part. Absolutely. Kenny Moore says Chip Long was a phenomenal recruiter. He was. Chad Williams says yes, he was, and a very good coach. He was also that. He rubbed a lot of kids the wrong way. I don't know if I'd say a lot. I'd say a lot. It wasn't. There was also a lot of kids that really liked him. But the one thing that you can always say about Chip, and I've never heard anyone not say this, you always knew where you stood with him. And I know some kids who thought he was too hard on him respected that about him. Kids would rather have that than a coach who's always cool with them, but they never know if they're getting the truth or not. Tyler Dijak says, can our quartet of linebackers for the 2022 pull a Ewers and get here next week? Joking, but wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, it would be nice to a degree. You've actually seen that. So Gavin Wimsatt, if you guys remember him, the quarterback from Kentucky that Notre Dame was recruiting, he's going to play this weekend. And this is what I saw on Twitter from ESPN. So, I mean, it was a reputable – as soon as I said it, I heard it. It was from a news source. We can argue the legitimate or the reputation of ESPN, but it wasn't just some dude on Twitter is the point. That said Gavin Wimsatt is going to play this weekend in his high school and then finish and then go to Rutgers and be eligible to play this year. So, yeah, I don't think any of Notre Dame's players are in position to do that. But, yeah, it would be very interesting. But I think they'll be okay. Sparkling Swan, any updates on Sonny Styles' recruitment? How is Notre Dame looking on this? I don't believe Sonny's in decision-making mode right now. I think he's just kind of playing a season out and taking visits and making sure that whenever he makes the decision, he knows where he's going to go. every source that I've had, including my sources in Ohio, all feel that Notre Dame is the leader right now. Now, that's not rest. That's not like get comfortable in your situation. And obviously the position that his brother plays has kind of in the back of my head has me concerned. I've always said, you don't Lorenzo playing isn't going to help Sonny, but if Lorenzo's unhappy, that potentially could cause some problems. I'm not saying Lorenzo is, it's just because of the nature of the position and what we've seen the last 6 months, that's a problem. But for where things are right now, I think Notre Dame's in a really good place. They got to finish, but I think they're in a good place. Liam Gaming, this is a great one. Ewers going to end up like the guy in trouble with the curve, and I don't mean the pitcher. Yeah, you're talking about the kid that the Braves ended up drafting. Yes, I like that one. I like that one. Yeah, I could see that. There's just something about that kid I just do not like. We're going to chip along. Curtis Hewitt says BK wanted a change and a new type of offense from what I heard. Not a new type of offense. They're running the same offense now. But a lot of the plays that we saw on Sunday were plays we've seen in the past. There were some wrinkles to it, but there's stuff that we'd seen in the past when Chip Long was here. Hey, I get a block an Alabama fan. See you later. We haven't seen Ladarius Martin in here for a while. John Long says, offensive line better look amazing this week. Was just dropping by to add my like and say, love the show. Back to work. Thank you for that, John. Very, very much. Mike Gardner says, I look at it this way. Notre Dame has to pitch early playing time to receiver recruits. Yeah, true. Get through a lot of these questions, trying to get to a lot of comments, try to get to some questions. Patrick McGrain says, do you think Watts is practicing 100% at Rover or more of a cross-training will play receiver in a game if he isn't needed at Rover? Possibly see him at both positions in the game. Right now, he's pure defense. I mean, he has made a full position shift right now. I do not see this as a cross-training situation. And they weren't playing him a receiver anyway. I mean, that's the thing that's frustrating is like Brian Kelly talks about how he's this dynamic athlete and they got to find a role for him. You had him a receiver the last 2 seasons and you never felt the need. You didn't even feel he was dynamic enough apparently to run down on kickoffs, but you're going to move him to Rover. So it's one of the frustrating things out there. Timothy Church says, was BK somewhat right when he said the silent cadence prevented the O-line from getting a burst on run plays? The only way a silent cadence can stop you from getting a burst in the run game is if you're not teaching guys how to execute a silent snap. I mean, there are teams that use silent cadences all the time, and they're successful with it. This is just Notre Dame, for some reason, has no clue how to get this going under this current staff. It's mind-blowing. You knew it was going to be loud. Were you not doing silent cadence all week in practice? I mean, does your O-line coach not know how to teach guys how to fire off, how to have their cues? I mean, silent cadence should also kind of come with a little bit of timing. There's certain cues the center can give that teams do. Hey, look, I'm going on 2 second this time. I'm going on 1 second. I'm going 3 seconds. So guys kind of have an idea of, hey, ball's going to be snapped, and then bam, you fire off. That's a cop out. That's what Brian Kelly does, right? That's what is so maddening. I just wish he'd come out and say, like, why won't he say this? Like, I remember all 2019, he was like, oh, we're fine, we're doing good. He was always making excuses for the offensive line. Oh, we had these mistakes because Georgia was a loud crowd. And it wasn't until the next year when the line was playing well that he finally was like, yeah, we didn't play real well last year. Like, it's like he's incapable of – it's like he feels like if he says something negative about somebody that people in the media or the fans criticize, it's like somehow validation or something. It's so strange. Just, hey, look, we didn't play well up front this week. And to give the silent snap thing as an excuse, that's a BS excuse. In fact, your attempt to defend your coach or defend your players is actually an indictment of your coach. because this guy's been here now for his fourth season, right? 18, 19, 20, 21, fourth season. And he still can't get this team ready to play in a loud environment? Is that really what you're telling us? That's a coaching problem. Get them ready. You had all freaking summer and fall camp to get them ready for a loud crowd. You said all week, hey, we know it's going to be loud. We know it's going to be loud. And you couldn't figure out a way to snap the ball and come off hard. Coleman Smith says, Coach, this might be a dumb question. It's not, but I don't understand when y'all say the O-line is catching when blocking. Okay, this is a good example. So what I want you to do, Coleman, is I want you to go watch. I want you to go to I believe it was the third quarter when Chris Tyree scored on the 1-yard run, and I want you to watch Michael Carmody on that play. At the snap, he just kind of stands up and lets the blocker come to him, right? Instead of firing off and getting physicality, getting force, right? And so instead of coming off and striking, he came off and caught the guy. So he caught the blow of the defensive lineman. Now, he ended up pushing the guy back because he's really strong, but that's what I mean by catching. So essentially, like, you've got the line of scrimmage right here, right? Notre Dame's on this side, the opponent's on this side. At the snap of the ball, you can do one of two things. Number one is you can step with power and drive through the point of contact, or you can kind of take a step, lift up, and then let the defense come to you, right? Or this way. Let the defense come to you. Notre Dame is letting the defense come to them. They're letting the defense basically set the tone for where and when and how you're going to have engagement. What the best lines do is they set the tone, right? So what you're trying to do with the line of scrimmage is both teams are trying to reset the line of scrimmage. So at the ball, the line of scrimmage is here. If you're the offense, you're trying to reset the line of scrimmage in this favor. If you're the defense, you're trying to reset the line of scrimmage in your favor. What Notre Dame was allowing Florida State to do, even with 4-man rushes, is to reset the line of scrimmage in the defense's favor. What that was doing to the running game is you were seeing now Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree having to make cuts 2-3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Whereas last year, at times, they weren't making cuts, so they got past the line of scrimmage. And sometimes it was still behind the lineman. So you speed up the decision-making process. What happens then is once you have to make an early cut, the defense now knows where the ball's going, and they can fly to the ball. And so that's what it is catching. Instead of like stepping, exploding your hips, striking through contact, and then driving your feet through that contact, they are stepping their feet and then stopping their feet in many cases, and not striking, but then kind of catching and then trying to push afterwards. It's horrible technique, and it's not what good offensive lines do. They didn't do that last year. They did that in 2019 and then a lot in 2018, but more so in 2019. And it's something that has to get fixed. Nate Wallace, I've had many people say it's very interesting. Is it me or does Josh Burnham look like a modern-day version of Jack Lambert? Obviously, the teeth are still there. Here's hoping he plays like Lambert. I think Josh is a little better looking than Jack Lambert was, but tall, rangy, physical kid. He's a really talented linebacker, and he's off to a very good start to the season. He looks even more explosive this year than he did last year. And Tyler says Coleman Smith, meaning they don't fire off the ball and let the defenders come to them and initiate contact as opposed to the lineman initiating the contact with the D lineman. And it's pretty accurate. Mr. Kostrub, Mayor on the field for leading receiver tomorrow. Mayor or the field for leading receiver yards or scores tomorrow. I'm going to go with the field. I got to think Toledo's going to look at that game and say, hey, look, we're not letting 87 go off on us. Trying to find some more questions here. Appreciate your patience. Ty B says, just moved to San Diego from Boston. Couldn't be more surprised how San Diego is a Notre Dame city. I actually have a couple Notre Dame. Rob Conley, someone who has been on the chat before, and someone who I've known. Him and his sister both live out in San Diego. They're very big Notre Dame fans. I didn't know that there was a lot of Notre Dame fans out there. My wife grew up in San Diego and Escondido, which is like right outside of San Diego. And she never talked about it. She didn't really know much about Notre Dame until we got married. Well, until we started dating. Now she's probably a bigger Notre Dame fan than I am. And RG referring to Tommy Rees, he made this in a super chat earlier, which we appreciated, made that comment. And then the response is, yeah, but either Rees runs his team or not. But it's not Rees's team. It's his offense. He's responsible for practice preparation, for game planning, for play teaching. But it's still, at the end of the day, he is not responsible for hiring and firing people. A coordinator should always have a say in who's on the staff, always. And I'd be willing to bet you good money that Tommy Rees has and will give Brian Kelly his input. But Tommy Rees cannot walk into the office and demand that someone be fired. You don't want to have that reputation as a coordinator either. That's Brian Kelly's decision. Should Brian Kelly receive input from Tommy Rees? Yes. But that's Brian. Tommy Rees doesn't have Tommy Rees could walk in tomorrow and say, hey, I'm firing so-and-so. And Brian Kelly's like, you're not the head coach. You're not firing anybody. That's my job. That's exactly how that conversation will go. And that's how a conversation should go, in my opinion. Nate Wallace asks, do you think Freeman might have moved to a 4-down front more often considering how thin we are at linebacker? No, I don't think so because, number one, you got to be who you are, right? I think there's some personnel things that they can do with people that they can get into it. The other part of it, too, is when they were in 4-down linebackers, when they were in 4 linebacker looks last week, they didn't have a third inside linebacker on the field. They went to a second rover. You saw Isaiah Pryor and Jack Kaiser on the field together. Well, they can still do that. And then you have, J.D. Bertrand and whoever the Mike is playing together. I also think there's a lot of times they went 3-down where they were in a 3-down alignment, but they were in 4-down personnel and they had Isaiah Foskey off the ball. I think that you'll still see some of that. I would like 4-down to be the base of what they do because I think that's the best personnel, but you still got to be who you are. And they were in 4-down more often than not until they made that scheme change in the fourth quarter to kind of limit the big plays and try to run out the clock. Terry Howie says, problem is Kelly's fiercely loyal to his assistants. Most of them, not always, but I think there's more to it than that. I don't necessarily care to get into it. But I just, yeah, I think it's part of it. Part of it. Martin Demo, do you think Notre Dame would be able to take Georgia and Clemson if we progress in the season as well as you think we will? Yeah, absolutely. Neither one of those teams impressed me very much on Saturday. Kevin says, shouldn't Tommy Rees start out at a lower class team to learn the ins and outs of the coordinator's position? I don't think you need to be. I mean, Clark Lee was never a coordinator until he was a coordinator at Notre Dame. Now, he had a lot more coaching experience, and that was the argument that I made in 2020. I felt that in 2020, Tommy Rees should not have been the coordinator. I thought it should have been Joe Moorhead. But I also said that it's not going to be long for Tommy Rees is ready to be a legitimate coordinator. I mean, it's every situation is different. I think every learning experience is different. I don't think that you look. Tommy Rees was not a problem for me on Sunday. I don't know what else to say. I have people like losing their minds over the third and medium counter call, which I hated. But if you are going to sit there and pick apart play calls, and if perfection is your standard for play calls, then there's not a good coordinator on the planet, not one. Because every coach is going to make bad calls. And I didn't like that call. It just didn't. But that was one bad call in a game where he had a lot of good calls. And not just calls, but like just things like, hey, they scored and got some momentum back. Let's go tempo and get that momentum right back. Hey, they just scored. Let's take some shots and change the momentum. It's more than just play calls. I thought the demeanor in which he got that team to play with was something I really liked. That was something that I really appreciated and liked seeing. So, I mean, I don't get why Tommy Rees is a topic of conversation right now. And I don't mean to disrespect by that. I'm having a hard time grasping that. Now, maybe in the next 2 games he does a bad job. We talk about it, but Tommy Rees called a really good flipping game on Sunday night. I mean, they were up 38-20 halfway through the third quarter. I mean, that's pretty good. And find some more questions here. John A1, that's a good question. Could we see a Buckner package versus Toledo? That's interesting. I would like to see that. Absolutely. I would really like to see that. Will they do it? I don't know. I think it, especially the way that Cone played last week. But if that was going to be something you were going to do, I would still stick with it. I would like to see that. Jeff Fluke, do you think the freshman wide receivers will get early playing time against Toledo? Maybe instead of calling off the dogs on defense, let the D hunt and give the young skill guys work. I agree with you. I think that's a great comment, Jeff. I think that's exactly what I would do. And I do it in the first half. If you're up more than 10, get a series where Dion's at W. Get a series where Lorenzo's getting is at X, and throw him the ball. I don't care if it's just a hitch route. I don't care if Toledo's playing off coverage and you just catch it and bang a hitch to him. I don't care. Get him a touch. And get him a touch in a real minute because you're going to need those kids at some point in time this year. And Davis gets hurt or Braden Lindsey gets hurt. And again, I hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, you don't wait till then to get those guys touches. That would be poor preparation. You get them chances when you can. And this is the perfect game to get them playing time. Absolutely the perfect game for that. Ty B asks, Brian, have to know you watch the Wu-Tang series on Hulu. So you're the second person that's texted me about that today. My buddy Sean, who hosted the show on Monday with Vince, co-hosted the show on Monday with Vince, asked me that today. I didn't realize there was a show on Hulu. We have Hulu. My wife and I actually just got done getting through the first 9 seasons of Blue Bloods, which was on Hulu. I didn't know that it was on there. So I have not had it on there. I've been on Hulu in a couple weeks because we had the first 9 seasons on Hulu of Blue Bloods, but the last 2 seasons I have on YouTube TV because Hulu doesn't have it past season 9. So I haven't been on there in a while, but he was telling me that there's a really good Wu-Tang series. I think he said they're in season 2 now. I had no idea. So, yeah, I'm going to be watching that. Absolutely. I'm going to start watching it probably next week. I'm going to be a little busy these next couple days, but I'm going to start watching next week. Terry Howie, no playlist, but my wife is not allowed to talk to me after she makes my poached eggs. Oh, Kenny Moore, no playlist for me, but I have a food list if that counts. Absolutely. It's about rituals. It's about the pregame rituals. All right, Matthew Southgate says, if we execute early as we should have last week, we will see lots of young players. If we miss opportunities to score TDs, then same old story, I fear. I think you're absolutely right, Matthew. I mean, last week they got the first 4 possessions. They got into Florida State territory and got 1 touchdown. That's gotta be fixed, in my opinion. Tommy Gunn says, Brian, did you see that article about the D2 or FCS? I think it's D2, right? Coach that never punts and only does onside kicks. What was your response to someone like that? I'd say that you're nuts. And I'm not a traditionalist like, I would like to see people be more aggressive than punt. I think I'm a believer that you take chances knowing that sometimes they're going to work out, but it's going to work out more often than not if you've got a good football team. But I don't like the notion of onside kicking. I don't like the notion. I mean, at that point in time, you're just playing arcade football. And it's easy to do that at a D2 school where there's not the same pressure to win and develop players like there is at a place like Notre Dame. So I would hate that a lot. The DMK podcast asks, does Notre Dame have the opportunity to get more experienced talent from the portal now? It's more like free agent market and push for a natty, or do you think they are doing enough there? I think they should always do what they did this offseason, which is be smart about who you target guys that add more than just experience, target guys that add legitimate difference maker ability. I think Jack Cohn is a difference maker. I've said that for a while. I think a Caleb Evans would have been a difference maker. I didn't like the Kane Madden as much for obvious reasons. But if you don't feel like your line is ready to go without him, then okay, I get it. I would make sure that it's a definite upgrade. I don't think you want to bring in a guy just because he's more experienced than a younger player, but a significantly less talented player. That's always my concern. I think what they're doing now is smart. I think too many transfers can start kind of messing with the psyche of your football team. But I think if you're strategic about it, the way that Notre Dame was this year, you can still do. And it may be a couple more guys moving forward. Where I would be more open to the transfer portal is real young guys. So freshmen, maybe redshirt freshmen that you recruited that you were able to do some background on, that things aren't working out where he's at and he wants to come. The problem with transfers at a place like Notre Dame, especially guys that have, or have multiple years of eligibility, is if you didn't recruit them in high school, it's a lot harder to kind of get to know their background. And it's a lot shorter period of time because the recruitment for a high school kid, I mean, it takes a course over sometimes over years. You get a lot of time to get to know a kid. You know what you're bringing into your program. That's a lot harder with the transfers. And that's why I think sometimes you see these transfers come in and just not fit because, like, that kid just looking at you to play football. He comes there thinking he didn't have to go to class, he didn't have to do this, he didn't have to do that, and then all of a sudden you've just brought a kid in your program that you shouldn't have brought in your program. And I think that's what makes the transfer portal risky for Notre Dame. That's why, like, if you're going to bring, that's why I said if you're going to bring in guys that have 3+ years of eligibility, I would always err on the side of guys that maybe you recruited, but then being very careful to make sure that you're doing your due diligence to make sure you know what kind of person you're bringing into your football program. Ty B says, with linebacker depth being challenged, can this still be a top 10 defense? Absolutely. Absolutely. I do believe it can, because mainly the defensive line is still loaded. And if they get Jordan Patel back at some point in time this year, and hopefully it's soon, I don't know if it will be because, again, Brian Kelly tells us nothing. That could help too because I think Jordan can play some linebacker. I do. Austin Schomburg, if Notre Dame can't get it going on the ground this week, is it time to panic? It's not time to panic, but it's time to become a little bit more concerned. Yes, I would be a little bit more concerned. Rob asks, Brian, off topic, I'm both a huge Notre Dame and movie fan. I believe Notre Dame has only let Hollywood film for Rudy and Newt Rockne All-American. Do you think Notre Dame will ever let Hollywood film on campus again? Yeah, I think they would. If the right movie story came along, yeah, I think it would. Now it'd have to be like a Notre Dame centric movie. I don't think they're going to let them film on campus for like a scene. But look, number one, if Notre Dame is offered enough money, they'll do it. Number two, I think it would have to be something that would be Notre Dame centric. Like it would have to be a story about Notre Dame. Certainly would think they'd let them do it. You know, I didn't know until I watched the program this summer because a buddy of mine was talking about it. So I was like, I'll watch it again. I didn't realize that was at South Carolina. I didn't know that. I for some reason, I just thought it was at Florida State. I had no reason to think that other than I thought that's kind of the program that they were trying to kind of emulate with the color of the jerseys and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a shot on the University of South Carolina in whatever, was it Bryce Williams? Is the name of their stadium, I think? But yeah, that's where it was. I did not know that. Kevin asks, do you know if the Notre Dame game will be streamed on YouTube? It will not. It will only be on Peacock Premium. Chief Brody, how utterly befuddled will I be if they beat Toledo this week 21-3 and the defense plays amazing, but the offense can't hardly move the ball? That would be very disturbing. Very disturbing. Beer Belly, do you think we will see Buckner in the fourth when the leads is comfortable 52-17? I hope we see him before that. I definitely hope we see him before that. People getting on me about saying ESPN is reputable. I kind of walked it back. I didn't mean reputable. I just meant like known, John Climate getting on me about the reputable comment. I'm sorry. Victoria Schumpert asks, do you think Watts at the Viper position will pay off with the speed he has? I think if they use him correctly, I think it could bring some advantages. I think because here's the thing that I've said. Like, I love Jack Kaiser at the position. I don't love Isaiah Pryor at Rover because Isaiah at Rover, let me rephrase. I don't like Isaiah at Rover in certain roles. I think if you use Isaiah correctly, he could be a force. And Isaiah being used correctly is blitzing off the edge, attacking the screen game, attacking the run game. That's not necessarily how I want to use Xavier. Xavier, to me, can bring some value from a, like you said, speed, range, athleticism, coverage potential. But he can still hit, at least he could in high school. So to me, him and Isaiah Pryor kind of balance each other out relatively well. So if you're playing a team that likes to run the ball and hit the perimeters and do those type of things, that's an Isaiah Pryor game. as that number 2 guy. If you're playing a team that wants to spread it out, USC, for example, that wants to spread it out and throw it around, I'm going to want to use Xavier more. So I'm playing Wisconsin. I don't know how much I'm going to use Xavier Watts against Wisconsin. If I'm playing Cincinnati, USC, North Carolina, we'll probably have a bigger role for Xavier Watts if he picks it up. So I definitely think he can bring some value. And then a lot of it has to do with his speed, but he's also not just fast. He's a pretty tough kid. He's a pretty strong kid for his size too. And I think you can use that to your advantage. AJ, I see the first part of your quote, but not the second. AJ says, I'd like to vent for a minute. I am in a Notre Dame group on Facebook, and I shared my opinion that I believe there are issues within the wide receiver room and the coach with lack of development. And I don't see the second point, your second part of that. I'm going to go down here a little bit and see if I can find it. In the meantime, while I'm looking for that, Jay has another super chat. Appreciate that. Notre Dame has 13 2022 commits invited to the All-American and UA Bowls. O-line Craig being the newest addition. That's impressive. Yes, and Nolan Ziegler needs to be invited to one of those games. It is absolutely absurd that he has not been invited yet. He flat out outplayed Drake Bowen, who's a 5-star recruit last week. Nolan is off to a monster start. I know he doesn't have the reputation and the big recruit, but Nolan Ziegler has been dominating. He needs to be in one of those stinking all-star games like now. So hopefully they can make that happen. So AJ, I'm going to go back and try to find the second part of your comment, but I don't see it. So if you want to finish that thought, I would love to hear the rest of what you said. I'm going to assume that it wasn't received well. I have noticed I like the Facebook groups. I post my stories on there all the time, but I don't engage with them much other than on our Facebook group because a lot of the Facebook groups are people that they don't want to hear anything but Notre Dame is awesome, right? Like, you ever see the Lego movie? You know, everything is awesome. That song, everything is awesome. You're right. That's the only thing you ever hear me do. That's how I feel like there's a lot of Facebook Notre Dame fans are. And I'm not criticizing for it. Just it is what it is. Where you can't say anything negative. Everything's great. Hey, look, it ain't Ty and Charlie and Davey era, so it's wonderful. I don't want to go back. Like, their world is, if you don't have Brian Kelly, then the alternative is Bob Davey, Ty Willingham, and Charlie Weiss, which is kind of nuts to me. So rational conversation, objective conversation where there's some good and bad is just not a place. Facebook has not been the place where I've been able to find those conversations. And there's some really good Facebook groups out there. You know, I post at Notre Dame News a lot. Obviously, I post on my Facebook group. I post on about 8 different Facebook groups. Just post meaning I just put the stories out. But it's difficult to engage in rational conversation on some of those. M. Kostrub says, why would any Notre Dame recruit believe Notre Dame if they told them they'd get early playing time? Gotta prove it to the current batch. I agree. I mean, that's a legitimate concern. And but again, we're one game into the season. I'm not ready to just assume that Lorenzo Styles and Deion Colsey aren't going to play all year. Again, based on the past, I understand why we all, including me, think that's going to be the case, but let's just let it play out and see how it goes. That's what I would say. Jonathan Kasmerick says, Brian, does pineapple go on pizza? My wife would say yes. I would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. It should not be on pizza. But I'm also someone who believes if you like it on pizza, then you do you, right? That's one thing I love about America. If you like pineapple pizza, if you like doing things that I don't like, go for it, right? I don't think I despise the burning of the American flag, but I think that our Constitution affords you the right to do that as long as you're not doing it on my property or on government property, So that's what I love about our country. And I wouldn't put pineapple on pizza quite to that level, but it's a step below. It's getting up there because that doesn't make sense to me at all. It's kind of gross. I like pineapple, love pizza, not together. I love chocolate. I'm not going to put chocolate on pizza. Irish Medic, love the show. I just realized that all 5 of our middle games, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, USC, and North Carolina, all have bye weeks before our game. How does this happen too often? Well, they had more last year. It just doesn't bother me. I've talked about this before. It just doesn't bother me. I don't think byes give teams the advantages that people, I think, sometimes think that they do. I don't think that they do. DMK Podcast, $5. He says pineapple, anchovy, jalapeno pizza is the GOAT. That sounds so nasty. That sounds so nasty. All right, so there's a couple pizza questions down there. Christopher Sally says pineapple's pizza. I thought your wife was Italian. Okay, so let me clear this up. When my wife gets a New York pie, like she just gets cheese, right? When she gets like Domino's or Papa John's or that kind of thing, which she doesn't really view as real pizza, she gets pineapple on it. Pineapple, ham, and green peppers, I think, which I just think is gross. Yes, and Chief Bro, she gets ham on it. Yes. Herney77 says Hawaiian pizza is okay if your wife must have it. I just Tommy Gunn says I do like Hawaiian pizza from time to time. Christopher says I thought Hawaiian pizza was gross, but I tried it once. It was good. Chad Williams, not so much. So that's our pizza segment for today. So let's get back up here to these questions here. Back up here. Where were we? Okay, here we go. Back on track. WJS says, my best friend and I always get into arguments about Kelly is good for the Irish or not. What is your opinion on BK? I think Brian Kelly's been great for Notre Dame. I think Brian Kelly is the guy that took a program that had been wandering in the wilderness for 20 years, and it took some ups and downs of his own, but he's got Notre Dame back to being a top 5 caliber program. So he's been very good for Notre Dame. The argument should not be, is Brian Kelly good for Notre Dame? He has been. Not just winning and losing, but just again, part of this is Jack Swarbrick, but it's also part Brian Kelly. The changes to facilities, the changes to the field, the stadium, the scoreboard, the indoor facility, all that stuff, Brian Kelly has a role in, partly because of him advocating for we need this. The other part of it is putting a good product on the field that you can then go sell to donors about, hey, look, we need this. And so I think Brian Kelly's been good for Notre Dame. He's been great for Notre Dame. The question is, okay, can Brian Kelly get him over that final hump? That's the question. But the fact is, he got him to the point where we can have that conversation. We weren't having that conversation about Bob Davie, Ty Willingham, and Charlie Weiss. It was, hey, can he get him to not suck? And that was pretty much the standard back then. Just don't suck. And every time you'd think that one of those coaches did it, Bob Davie in was it year 2 or 3, had that Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl year, and it looks good with Matt LaVecchio, and then you go to the Fiesta Bowl and you get destroyed by Oregon State. And then he just was, he wasn't that guy. And then Ty starts off great and, beats Florida State at Florida State and you get into the top 10 and all that. And then just, Charlie's first 2 years were a lot of fun, first year especially. And then the next year you go out, you go 10-2, but you get blasted by Michigan, you get blasted by USC. And then after that, so BK is taking the program super far from where they were. It's just, can he get to that next stage? That's the question. And that's a legitimate, valid question. Can he get him over the hump to that championship level? But I don't know how you can argue that he hasn't been good for the Notre Dame when you look at the fact that he has brought them to the point where, 43-8 is like, it's good, but, he can be better. Well, I mean, there's a lot of coaches in Notre Dame's past that would take 43-8 over a 4-year stretch and feel like they did a pretty phenomenal job. Now, not the greats, right? Not Era, not Lou, not Coach Leahy, not Eric Parsegian, and that's that next standard for Brian Kelly. Will he get them there? That's where the conversation should be. That's the question. Chad Williams, what's your grade on BK on developing players? In the past, they wanted big skill in RKG. Other than the O-line, I give him a C for developing players. Thoughts? I'd definitely give him a better grade than that, especially recently. I mean, you look at the numbers of players Notre Dame has put in the NFL. That's development. Have they developed at every position? No, they haven't. Receiver development has not been good, especially in recent seasons. Like somebody's like, Dell Alexander's had some successes. Well, I'm sorry, Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin breaking out as seniors is not a coaching success. The question is, why did you freaking hold them back until they were seniors? Like, why couldn't you get them to develop sooner? When you look at past receiver coaches, Fuller breaks out as a sophomore. Floyd is a freshman. Golden Tate's a sophomore. You didn't see these breakouts for guys like that had that kind of talent. And, see TJ Jones kind of broke out as a senior, but TJ Jones wasn't Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool talent-wise. Kevin Austin talent-wise. So That's been an issue in recent seasons. I think receiver development was better in previous seasons with Mike Denbrock there. I think running back development has been up and down. Good under Tony Alford, bad under Autry Denson, really good under Lance Taylor so far. Tight end development's been really good throughout Brian Kelly's tenure. O-line development has been good throughout Brian Kelly's tenure, even though I don't think Jeff Quinn is doing a good enough job. He's not bad. D-line development in recent seasons has been outstanding. I mean, look, when you can have one depth chart, and when I talk about depth chart, I'm not talking about like a freshman who never played that eventually became an NFL player. I'm talking about guys that played. The 2019 defensive line had 5 defensive ends that are now playing in the NFL, not on practice squads, on full rosters. 4 of them got drafted. You know, you look at the 2015 defensive line, all 4 of those guys became NFL players. And the best of the group was the guy that went undrafted. And Romeo Okwara. So I think they've done a good job of development. They've done a really good job under certain coaches, but overall they've done a good job. I'd give them a B. I think he needs to be better. I think it can get better, but I'd give him a B. There was a couple year stretch where Paul Longo kind of lost it. Like he wasn't getting the job done, and that was not where you wanted to be, and it kind of led to that 2016 season. But overall, I think I'd give him a B. And I think the NFL success and the draft success supports that, especially more so the draft success. Herney777 says, more of an excuse than anything. However, true noise can make a difference. This is in reference to the silent count. Look, noise makes a difference. Not saying it doesn't, but you know that's going to be the case. And that's the case when Alabama plays on the road. It's the case when the case when Clemson plays on the road. It's the case when Georgia plays on the road and Ohio State plays on the road. Oklahoma plays on the road. And it's not the problem continually that it has been for Notre Dame. It's like every time they play in a big game like this, Brian Kelly talks about how the environment was just too challenging. You know, the Miami, it was just difficult, too loud. Michigan and Georgia, and now this. It's like you knew that, so fix it, prepare for it, do a better job, hold your coaches accountable if they don't do a better job. Ty B asked, those 2 underthrows by Cohn last week, was that an arm strength issue or was he putting too much touch on the ball? Look, Jack Cohn does not have a cannon. He's not going to throw the ball 65 yards downfield. He's not going to make that post throw, in my opinion, that Ian Book made against Navy in 2019. But I think the issues were more the touch thing, like you mentioned. That's a good observation, Ty. The other thing, too, is I think he got rid of the ball a little bit too late. You know, he did like a double hitch throwing that ball to Braden Lindsey. Look, there aren't a lot of quarterbacks going to be able to drop back, double hitch, then throw the ball to Braden Lindsey and lead him. There's not a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be able to do that. I think that was him adjusting the speed, saying, hey, you hit that top drop and you let that sucker go and throw it out there and let those kids run underneath it. He did that in the second half to Kevin Austin twice, and that second throw to Kevin Austin was a thing of beauty. So I think that was kind of a lesson learned. I hope that he can see that this week where, you know, he can drop back, hit that drop, and then let it go and let Braden Lindsey run underneath it. So a little less air, a little bit more distance, and then just get the ball out quicker. I think those are going to be the keys. Ty B, funniest Brian moment on IB was when he went off about the leprechaun being offensive. It wasn't just about the leprechaun, it was about the Fighting Irish thing. But it wasn't so much about the leprechaun. It was just the overall nature of just incredibly oversensitivity in this country. And it just drives me nuts. But, yeah, it is what it is. John DeCrisio, I was watching clips of the offensive line under Holtz, and they definitely fired off the line of scrimmage as soon as the ball was snapped all in one motion. We saw that under Coach Heastand as well. Absolutely, we did. Jonathan Kazmarek says, general question to anyone who may know, why is the only jersey available to buy on Notre Dame's official website number 21? I know it's learned styles Caleb offered, but I want a 14 jersey so bad. It's because it's the 2021 season, would be my guess. So I don't know, like maybe they think that they would have to pay Kyle Hamilton too much money if they sold his jersey. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I didn't realize that was the only jersey you could buy. I'm curious if it's going to be different in the bookstore this weekend. I may swing by there. We'll have to see. Notre Dame 2164. Hope you're feeling better, my friend. I know it's been a rough couple weeks for you after all those vacations, so we're praying for you still. But Brian, do you think we could use the transfer portal to build more depth next year at wide receiver? Would it even be worth it since a lot of the transfers are not kids getting playing time elsewhere? That's not always true. Sometimes it's, like the kind of kids I would look for is like some of the smaller school kids that are really good that want a chance to get some spotlight time. I would look into that. But at the same time, it's kind of like what I said about Cade Madden is if Cade Madden was like a dominant difference maker, he wouldn't be coming back to college for his 6th year. So I would look at that. I would look at maybe some younger transfers that maybe have some eligibility left. I would certainly look at it, but you got to be careful. Does a Ben Skoranek really move the needle for you next year? You have to think about that. We'll say, okay, maybe he doesn't he's not going to be a playmaker. Like, we're not going to score 50 points a game because of him. But you know what? We could really use some experience, some veteran leadership. So maybe there's some value to that. I mean, you have to think about what your needs are. And needs aren't just, hey, we need a body at receiver. It's the type of player we need. Do we need someone that's older, that's got some leadership? Do we need someone younger that's got eligibility? Those are all things you have to ponder, and we really won't know the answer to that until we get closer to the end of the season when we've seen kind of how some of these guys have developed. And also it's about, okay, look, I hope, because Brian Kelly said, hey, we're not worried about the depth of receiver. That makes me believe that Brian Kelly's convinced himself that Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey are coming back next year. I don't think that they will. That's not intel. That's not scoop. That's just, I follow college football, and kids that have injury histories like that, coming back for a 5th year and risking that again, if you're healthy this year, is usually not the way to go. And plus, Braden Lindsey's going to have a great college. He's going to run fast. He's going to run the 4.3s. I just, anything he lacks from an experience standpoint, he would be able to make up for with great times. That would surprise me a little bit. Domer Grizz asks, happy Friday. How did MTA do last weekend? I was surprised not to notice him much during the game. Victim of the 3-5 alignment, still transitioning to big end. I'd say all of that, Grizz. I think he had some good moments, came off the edge relatively well. I don't think as a whole, the ends didn't really set the edge all that effectively. I thought he played hard. I thought he got good penetration when given the opportunity. I thought he had a solid first game. Wasn't great. Wasn't bad. Just had a solid first game. Domer Grizz also asked, does Kyle Hamilton have the potential to go down as the best safety in Notre Dame history? If not, who is? If so, will he reach that potential this year? I mean, certainly has a chance. Yeah, absolutely. And we had a question about this early in the summer, and he has to have a big year, obviously. I think right now, Harrison Smith's probably still the best safety Notre Dame has had under Kelly because he had 2 really, really good years. Kyle Hamilton's had 1. But if Kyle continues playing the way he's played last year and this year, he'll go down as the best. Best all time. I mean, I don't know. The problem is, like, there's a lot of safeties I never saw play. So how could I say that, a DB at Notre Dame is better than Luther Bradley? I never saw Luther Bradley play. I know people that think he was the best DB. I mean, I can tell you about guys from 90 on or 88 on, Pat Terrell and Bobby Taylor and Jeff Burris and Harrison Smith and Jerome Sapp and Glenn Earl and guys like that. I've had people bring up Deke Cooper. Does he have a chance to be the best of that group? Absolutely. All time, again, it's like baseball. I don't love – why am I going to compare Ken Griffey Jr. to Babe Ruth? Different eras, different games. Everything was different. Babe Ruth didn't play against – I mean, let's be honest. There was a chunk of the population of elite athletes on the planet that Babe Ruth never had to play because they weren't allowed to play in the Major League Baseball, right? And I'm not just talking about African-American players. I'm talking about Hispanic players, guys that are now great players in the league. It was just a white league, right? Well – would his numbers have been different if it was a more inclusive league? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because all I know is what he did in the league that he played in, right? It was a different game. I mean, what would Mickey Mantle's numbers have looked like if they had the medical technology then after he tore his knee up that they have now? Would his knee have been able to be repaired? And who knows what his numbers would have looked like? What would Ted Williams have done if he hadn't had to fought in 2 wars? I mean, Ted Williams fought in World War II and Korea, flew planes, missed some of the prime years of his career, and still put up monster numbers. I mean, I would encourage you, if you want to have a fun experiment, go take the 3 years before World War II, Ted Williams numbers, and project them through his entire time that he didn't play, and do the same thing with Korea when he fought in the Korean War, and look at what his numbers would have been. he could have been gone. I mean, some people still call him the greatest hitter of all time. But how can I compare that to Ken Griffey Jr.'s era? Then no one ever would have asked Ken Griffey Jr. to go fight in a war. And I'm not criticizing. It's just a different era. So I just don't like. How can I compare, Aaron Rodgers to John Elway or Joe Montana? It's a different era. And then how can I compare him even more so to Otto Graham or Johnny Unitas? It's a different era, different games. It's just impossible. I like comparing eras. And so, in the last 20, 30 years, does Kyle Hamilton have a chance to be the best in that era? Absolutely. Especially the way he started the season. Absolutely. But all time, I'm not qualified to say that, in my opinion, because there's so many players I never saw play. Ooh, here's a good one. M. Kostrub. What's the more interesting matchup on Saturday? Oregon versus Ohio State or Iowa versus Iowa State? I'm looking forward to the Oregon Ohio State game. I think Iowa and Iowa State are both a tad overrated, to be honest with you. I don't think that's the ninth and best team in the country. I think Oregon and Ohio State are legitimately two very good teams. This is a great opportunity for the Pac-12 to say, hey, look, we are not what you say we are. I don't think they just have to beat Ohio State to accomplish that. It has to be a 4-quarter game that maybe Ohio State kicks a field goal and win at the end. Something like, like a real competitive game. That could be a statement game. You combine that with LSU getting smacked by UCLA, it could give the Pac-12 some standing. But that's the more intriguing. That's to me the most intriguing game this weekend outside of Notre Dame. Paul Hamilton says, I remain positive and confident about the season. Just a hypothetical. What scenarios or record would cause Brian Kelly to start Buckner over Pine instead of Cone? I just think it would have to be Cone gets hurt, or he just has a stretch of 3-4 games where he just starts turning the ball over a ton. I think that would be it. I don't see a scenario in which he gets benched outside of injury because I don't think he's that kind of quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback. Joe Medina, I hope I'm saying that right, Joe. Did you ever find out why the defense went into a prevent a win defense? I could not believe what I was seeing. You had them down and you let off the pressure. I agree. And Brian Kelly talked about wanting to run out the clock and those type of things, and it was a bad answer, but that's Brian Kelly's always done those kind of things. But they got the job done. They still got the W. It was maddening, but they got the W, and they'll learn from it. I guarantee they'll handle it a little bit different if it happens again this year. Fred Benson says, I hope the U loses at home to App State tomorrow. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Their turnover chain is stupid. App State's going to crush the U like they did Michigan in 2007. I hope you're right. Ty B says, after Drew Tranquil's injury, this was after the Georgia Tech game in 2015. During the Georgia Tech game in 2015, I hold my breath every time a player jumps up in celebration. When Kevin Austin scored, I was like, no. Yes, I agree with you. Herney does not see App State beating Miami. I'll say this. I think we're going to learn a lot about Miami this weekend because they did not show up against Alabama. I mean, yes, Alabama's better, but they didn't even want to be there. Like the first time they got hit in the mouth, they kind of folded. How do they bounce back from that? That's going to be a big thing. That's going to tell us about I think Miami was supposed to have like a 9-3 year. I predicted them to lose to Alabama, but the way they lost is one of those things where this team could fall apart if they don't have good leadership. So we're going to learn a lot about them this weekend. A lot. Because if they fall to 0-2, now all of a sudden I think Manny Diaz needs to be on the hot seat. Neil Wachter says, which linebacker do we need to step up in a big way to fill the injury holes? And Tommy Gunn says the Prince, talking about Prince Colley, and I think he's right. I think Prince Colley's one. I think Bo Bauer's another one. I think if Bo can step up and play more consistent football, it would allow you to maybe cross-train Drew White a little bit more in some instances. But right now, I don't know if I trust Bo to execute effectively enough in the pass game to be that guy. Ty B, with NIL and guys making a lot of money, could that split a locker room? Sometimes money can cause immaturity and rub people the wrong way. Absolutely it can, especially if guys are flaunting it and flashing that money and being that way. Absolutely could, but that's where leadership comes into play. Martin Demo, could we have the show go on for 2 more hours? I won't make it to the end of the day. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. We have to wrap up here somewhat soon. Nathan Lytle says, why is it that when we beat Clemson last year without Lawrence, everyone discredited the win, but Georgia beats them without Trevor, and they are the next best thing next to Bama and scored 3 points? It's because the difference is, I mean, look, last year DJ kind of got thrown into the mix. He was the backup quarterback. Now he's the starter. That's part of it. I mean, there's legitimate reasons for that. But the other thing, too, is Notre Dame still gave up, 33 regulation points to Clemson last year. Even though they beat them, they gave up 33 points and a lot of yards to that team. Clemson's flat out got dominated on offense by Georgia's defense. That's the difference. Now, Georgia's offense stunk as well, and I would argue was every bit as bad as Clemson's, but they had that pick six. So I think that's it. And look, a lot of people didn't discredit that Notre Dame win over Clemson until they lost to Clemson. If Georgia plays Clemson in the postseason and Clemson smashes them, then people will say, here's why they lost. And they're still learning to play without Trevor and Travis Etienne and that kind of stuff. They would discredit that the same way. Christopher Sally, Ashton Craig was named the Adidas All-American Bowl as per his Instagram. Have you had a chance to review his film from the first few games? I have not. Martin Demo says, Nate posted the same thing. It's just haters and anything to discredit Notre Dame, referring to Nathan's question there. Jules Minnie says there is a discount code for Peacock on the Notre Dame website. Yeah, it's like what, $7.50 for 3 months if you use, I think it's promo code Notre Dame or something like that. But yeah, I would encourage you to look at that. Trying to get down here some more questions. Patrick McGrain says, watching the FSU game, my 3-year-old son rooted for Florida State because red is his favorite color, and my wife liked Florida State's helmets because the gold isn't obnoxious Notre Dame's. I need a new family. I don't think I'm sorry for that, Patrick. I really am. Look, Martin Demo has some parenting advice for for Patrick. You can always put him up for adoption. It's never too late. I just say you've got a lot of teaching to do, man. It gives you a challenge, right? So now you've got a new challenge with your wife. And, the thing I would say to her is this: okay, you don't want it as obnoxious. So that wedding ring I bought you, would you be okay if I sold that and bought you a wedding ring with less diamonds and, maybe a little less flash? I would say that, so look, or do you want that bling? So maybe flipping on her like that a little bit. That would probably work on my wife. I don't know if it'll work on yours, but good luck with that, my friend. Good luck with that very, very much. Now, at least it wasn't Michigan, right? Like, at least wasn't, I really like that maize or that yellow on their pants. That would make me have to rethink the family. I'd have to start looking for a new family at that point in time. And Christopher says, if you put Notre Dame in the Peacock promo code, you get 3 months of Peacock Plus if that interests you. And then AJ says, here's my second part. It was quickly spun into that I am negative and just want to bitch and complain. Why is this always the argument when someone offers their opinion of harmless criticism? It's because the nature of Facebook and Twitter. It's not the most rational. It's not the most. Look, I used to get in arguments all the time on Twitter and Facebook. And then I realized, like, this is not a sane platform for having a rational conversation. It's a place for insults and hot takes and anonymity and things like that. That's why I don't engage with people very much on that. It's no back and forth. It's just, hey, I'm trying to get likes and I'm trying to get people to do this or followers or whatever. It's not a place for rational thought. If you want to have rational thought, come to the message board. And that way you can, because the thing about a message board is it gives you a little bit more of a different type of platform, right? You have people that are willing to pay for that access, which means usually it's just a different, it's not a better or worse, it's a different audience. And people that are more willing to engage in a more fruitful conversation. So I would say that would be why. G. Rob Conley, speaking of my friend in San Diego, there he is right there. Thank you for that. G. Rob Conley then also asks, what is your overall thoughts on the state of Notre Dame after week one? I'm good with where they are. The injuries concern me. It's part of the game, though. That's a little bit concerning. But, I mean, look, they have to finish better, but there was a lot of good things to take out of that game. Jack Cohn was great. The receivers are great. The running backs played very well. I thought Michael Mayer showed, even though with some big mistakes, blocking-wise, drops, he still had some great moments. The defense, for a good stretch of that game, was absolutely dominant. The corners played well. You just got to clean up some stuff. You got to clean up some stuff. But I'm encouraged by where they can go. It's just, can you make those corrections? That's the question. And if they can, then I think it'll be good. Shepard says, why has Jacob Lacey fallen off after he started so well? Injuries. He's had some severe shoulder problems since that first year. T. Mill says, what did you think of our game one performance, being up 38-20 and then letting the game go over into overtime and sneaking out a win? Did we look good or poor in your opinion, or is Florida State that good? I don't think necessarily Florida State's that good, but I think Florida State played hard. They deserve some credit. But no, it was a poor coaching decision in an opener, in an environment where it's very hot and humid, where Brian Kelly said, let's kind of run it out, right? That was a mistake, obviously, because Florida State made them pay for that. But was it a poor performance? No. It was a sloppy performance for a very good football team. A very good football team had a sloppy, poor performance at times. They made some mistakes that allowed the game to be more competitive. They allowed a decent team, quality team, not a great team, but a quality team to make it more competitive. But I think the first 2.5 quarters showed that Notre Dame was clearly the better football team. Well, you got the win. I'd rather be where Notre Dame is than where Clemson is, or North Carolina is, or where Miami is, or a lot of other teams are. And I'd say, look, now it's about going out and, I mean, look, Ohio State was down for a while against Minnesota. It was the opener. I'm not going to overreact to it. Just like I would have had to tell myself not to overreact if they would have won like 52-3. Hey, look, it's still one game. It's a great performance, but it's still one game. That's what that's my takeaway. So I'm pleased. Now the question is, T Mills, okay, what do you do next, right? It's not so much that game that's going to tell us if they're great or not. It's what do you do next? Can you get those mistakes cleaned up relatively quickly? Can other guys step into those roles and play well? Like when Torian Folsom went down, when Malik Zaire and Torian Folsom went down in 2015, that was concerning for me. I was like, okay, this season could get rough. But then Deshaun Kaiser stepped up and played well. That didn't shock me. But then CJ Prosise steps up and becomes a 1,000-yard running back. That did surprise me a little bit. You had Josh Adams, who was a true freshman, stepped into the spotlight, played really well. So, that's going to be the thing now is, okay, well, guys are hurt. So who steps into the spotlight and who gets the job done? Those are legitimate questions. And the answer, whatever those answers are, is going to determine just how good this team ends up being. Joseph Salvatore says, just joined the show. Happy Friday, all. Brian, do you think Notre Dame plays a complete game in all 3 phases this weekend? I don't think so. I think week 2 is usually too early for me to predict that. If they do it, I won't necessarily be shocked. It'll be pleasantly surprised. But I still think week 2, with a lot of the injuries and some of the moving parts, you just lost your left tackle. You lost a couple more depth guys at linebacker. I'd say you're probably going to see some sloppiness at times, but I hope we see that. Certainly hope so. Robert Didoff says, Brian, do you have a favorite food at Notre Dame Stadium? My first game was when I turned 9 in 1984 when we played Miami, and to this day, my favorites are the hot dogs and popcorn. So as a fan, I've only ever been to three Notre Dame games as a fan. So like sitting in the stand. So 07 USC, 07 Duke, and 2012 Pitt. The only games I've ever been to as a fan. Every other game I've been in the press box. My favorite press box food is their chili. It's pretty good. I put cheese in it and crackers in it, and it's really good. I don't know if I remember I probably had a hot dog, but I don't remember eating a hot dog in the stands. And it's been 9 years now since I've sat in a game in the stands. So that's going to be kind of a fun experience this year, is kind of being able to experience that. But I don't say if I necessarily have one, but I also usually don't eat when I go to sporting events, to be honest. I maybe get a pretzel or a hot dog. That's usually it. I'll usually eat before, number one, because it's way too expensive. And plus, going to a Notre Dame game now, I live there, so I eat at home before and afterwards. I don't necessarily need to eat. But yeah, hot dog. I'll have to try a hot dog, see if it's good. And reminder, if you're coming to the game, it's now cashless. They don't accept cash anymore, so make sure you bring your credit cards. Chief Brody says, I'm at least old enough to remember the Weiss era. You are young. BK has been great for Notre Dame in getting the program back to where it needs to be. Not sure he has the prowess to get them over the hump, but he's close. I agree with that. I think it's a fair assessment. Herney777 says, I like Kelly, good at building a program. Sometimes I wonder if he's too comfortable. Probably not. I think that's a valid criticism. Chief Brody says, BK moved on without a title and his predecessor gets done. BK should get a statue too. I think it depends on how quickly that happens. But I would be open to hearing that argument if it happens in the first 2 years. Ty B says, you know I'm Tyler Buckner on the low. That's funny. Tommy Guns, this is going. Brian, my wife and I have our 6th year anniversary on the 12th, but the trip next week is to celebrate it. Any good anniversary type restaurants in the area? I'll tell you where I like, and this is where my wife and I go every year for our anniversary, which is in April. We go to a place called Seminini Grill, and it's in Mishawaka. It's not very far from the stadium. It's right on Cleveland. It's by Cleveland and it's kind of 23. It's kind of down past the mall on Cleveland. So, like, if you're going down Grape or Main, you'll turn left on Main and right on Grape. It's right in there by the Gigi's Cupcakes, and it's behind this like house-looking thing that's a candy store. It sells like old school candy. But Mike Elston actually is the one that told me about Seminini Grill. And so my wife and I go there every year, and it's Italian food, and it's all fresh. It's all made fresh. Like, so the noodles are made there. All the meat is locally bought. So like I get chicken parm there, and it's local. It's bought local. So it's all fresh. The pasta's fresh. The sauce is made fresh there. It's really good. It's like true Italian food. It's really good. And it's a smaller place. You kind of got to call. If you're going to go there, I'd say make a reservation. Call now. See if you can make a reservation. But that's because there's not a lot of people that can sit there. It's like maybe you can get 30, 40 people in there. Maybe. So I would that's a place I would go to. And there's some other places in South Bend. I just don't go over there much, to be honest with you. But Seminini Grill is the place I would recommend. Speaking of Mike Elston, Jonathan Kasmerick says Mike Elston is a great coach. Blows my mind that he doesn't get head coaching looks, though I want him to stay. I'm okay with it. I agree. Larry Friedel, Notre Dame is 5th in NFL players this season with 40, Alabama 53, LSU, and Ohio State, LSU, and somebody else just read that today. Yeah. That's where I said I can't give Brian Kelly development of a C when the fact is all those players played for him, at least for a year. I mean, Kyle Rudolph, Zach Martin. Well, Kyle Rudolph's really the only one that I remember being in the NFL right now, only played for Kelly for a year. Everybody else played for him for at least 2. I'm going to have to agree to disagree with that one, Mike McKinley. Pineapple is not made for pizza. John A1 says, if we were to get a wide receiver in the transfer portal, would it stop the development of Colsey and Styles, the program philosophy at certain positions on the team? Scares me. I wouldn't say that on defense. See, here's the problem, John, and this is where you're right on. The issue is that Del Alexander has shown no ability to go past 3-4 guys in his rotation. That's it. He has shown no ability to develop 5-6 guys, and he has shown no ability to develop once he picks his rotation. This is something that I've heard since he's been here. Once he picks his rotation, the guys that aren't part of that don't get coached up by him at all. They're not in meetings. They're not, especially if you're on scout team, you don't see him again. And you're just basically, I mean, the only time you're around him is when he's having you hold a bag to be tackled and hit by the other guys. So it would stunt their development if they're not starters. The thing is if they lose enough guys next year, they may still be starters in that guys in even with the transfer portals. I mean, if you lose Austin and Austin and Lindsey and Davis is going to be done. If you lose Austin and Lindsey, it's now Joe Wilkins and the freshman class. This team no longer has a receiver on the roster from the 2019 or 2020 classes. And next year, they won't have one from the 2018 class either, with the exception of Joe Wilkins. It's going to be all 21 and 22 receivers. That's it. That's it, because you just moved your last remaining 2020 guy. 2019 class, gone. Cam Art's a corner. Cam Romont transferred. 2020 class, gone. Xavier Watts is now playing defense. The other two guys transferred. That's all you have left. I mean, if you can't look at that and say that's a problem, then you're just not objective. And John, I'm not talking to you because I know you view it that way. So, that's it. Yeah. Domer Grizz says, love the history and perspective you provide. I generally understand the concept of different eras, but Ted Williams fighting in two wars. Dang, yeah. I mean, a lot of those great players in the 30s and 40s, they were enlisted. I mean, they got drafted, or some of them enlisted. Bob Feller fought in a war, fought in World War II. I mean, there's a lot of Joe DiMaggio. I don't know if he fought, but he was in the Army, I believe. I believe I could be wrong on that, but yeah, a lot of Hall of Famers in that era fought in the war. And some of them were, given desk jobs or things like that. But a lot of them fought. I mean, a lot of them actually went, like Ted Williams flew fighter planes. I mean, he fought in battles. That's a fact. So it's a really, Bob Feller, I believe he fought in the war. So it really is amazing to think about that. To think about that there were athletes that did that. Now, baseball was really the only major professional sport in America at the time. But I was actually looking at something the other day, and it was like players that have died during their careers, and there was a chunk of guys from the NFL and Major League Baseball that died in the war. Like they were professionals, and then they died in the war because they fought in the war. So it was interesting. Very interesting. Dylan Diaz, should we be in panic mode for what's going on at receiver position? I'm hardly ever going to advocate for being in panic mode, but yes, again, a bit of a semantic thing. It's well past time to be concerned. Well past time. Herney777, I absolutely agree with Iowa and Iowa State being overranked. Joseph Salvatore says, Brian, do you think the season prospects have changed because of the injuries? Has your prediction changed? I'm feeling pretty down because of the injuries. No, they haven't. Every team gets injuries. Notre Dame has only lost 2 starters. The rest of these guys are backups. Some of these injuries are third stringers. As long as they don't have another rash of 3, 4, 5 injuries, they're going to be okay. It's more about developing the guys you have. Notre Dame has got plenty of depth at almost all these positions to still be just fine. My season predictions and projections have not changed one bit. Kevin asks, Coach D, what about the Michigan versus Washington game on Saturday night? I thought that was going to be a good game until Washington went out and just peed down their leg against Montana. They scored 7 points against Montana. Look, John Donovan's just not a good coach. He wasn't a good coach at Penn State. James Franklin got rid of him, brought in Joe Moorhead, and that offense went from garbage to really good. And he's not any better at Washington. I mean, he's just not a good coach. And Jimmy Lake made a big mistake hiring him, and he's made a big mistake by keeping him. He scored 7 points at home against Montana. Montana. That's a huge problem. Huge problem. Adam Blair says, hey, Brian, I'm not really informed about Brian McGorder because I was a bit younger. What was his biggest problem as a coach, in your opinion, on that 2015 team? He had a couple problems. Number one, he's a terrible coach. And he didn't really understand the schemes that he was trying to employ. He was trying to run somebody else's defense. So he didn't understand or didn't care about, does this fit my defense? Do I have the players for this? Should we be doing this? Why are we doing this? He had no ability to adjust in games because of it. If you don't understand your own defense, you're not going to be able to adjust. And that's a problem. And number two, he was kind of a bad guy. He was a jerk. And I don't mean like hard on guys. I mean, he was nasty. And some of the things I would hear with my own ears. I would be told stories, but then when we'd be walking up to practice, when the media was at practice, Brian Van Gorder was calm and all that kind of stuff. But then when we were walking to press conferences and we were walking past the stadium and practice still going on, you could hear him yelling things to players. And you're like, wow, I was a yeller when I was a coach. I would never dream of saying something like that. And if a coach ever said something like that to me, I'd probably no longer be on the team anymore because there would be a fight in practice. It just real disrespectful stuff. And I've talked to former players, and they'll tell you, like, it's one thing to get on me. Like, Harry rips kids, and he cusses at kids, but it's never personal, and it's always teaching involved. He would just say really nasty things to just demean you and to tear you down. And that didn't fly very well at Notre Dame. And then, of course, he played guys that should have been playing. And that kind of was another thing that had people kind of lose faith in him. Got a super chat from Mark 1. Appreciate that very, very much, Mark. Very much. And of course, for the kind words that you had for us yesterday. So we're gonna have to fly through some of these questions here because we have to get rolling here. I have got to get some stories published and get some things up. So let me try to find some questions to work through here. But yes, Adam Blair, thank you for that question. Hopefully that answered it a little bit. John A1, I thought Kevin Austin was really good on Sunday. Was that what we should expect, a healthy Kevin Austin, or is his ceiling even higher? I think his ceiling's a little bit higher. There's a little bit of first game sloppiness, on a couple routes. But overall, I mean, that's what he brings to the table. He can make people miss. He can stretch the field. I think there's other things he can do that we didn't get to see him have a chance to do, back shoulders, work in the middle of the field. So there's more to his game than what we saw on Sunday. So, yes, I think he's capable of more. But that's still a pretty good performance. I mean, if you think about the performance he had, if he has just 91 yards every game, that puts him at 1,092 yards this season. That's a pretty good day. 48 catches for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. That's a good day's work. But, yeah, I think he's capable of hurting teams in a lot of different ways. To work, I think I missed this. I am late to the party today. Sorry if anybody's talking about the problems we have at linebacker and possible solution. Love your show. I think we talked a little bit about it. It's, Bo Bauer, I think, has got to be able to play well enough on Mike to cross-train. Getting Jordan Patel back could help with that. I think they're going to cross-train Jack Kaiser. Xavier Watts is obviously getting work at Rover. You have Isaiah Pryor there. I mean, and you've got to get Prince Colley ready. That's the other thing. You've got to get Prince Colley ready. I think that's a very important piece of this. That's going to be, to me, the biggest thing to me. Nolan Esparza, sure would have been nice to have Jack Lamb around. Thanks for that, Clark Lee. ETSU has balanced the karma for running Lamb off. And poor overall recruiting. Paul Rose, what is your opinion on Avery Johnson? He will be playing against my local high school this season. I like Avery a lot. He's definitely on my next in line radar for quarterback. He's he's not like the quarterbacks in Notre Dame normally recruits. He is a gunslinger. He's a scrambler. He's not, he can run, but he's like he likes to do some of that Johnny Manziel run around to throw kind of stuff. Really athletic kid, long blonde hair, not like Trevor Lawrence long blonde hair, but more it's a different kind of long blonde hair. But real athletic kid, real talented kid, just raw. But he's got some tools. I'm really curious to see what he does as a junior. Brendan Burtis, going back to an earlier question about Dell's recruiting under Chip Long, were those recruiting wins about Dell or Chip Long? Does this affect your answer to the earlier question? You're talking about the one about how recruiting has been different. Number one, I'd give more credit to Dell and Tommy Rees. Look, here's the reality, okay? This is what I was told by every source at Notre Dame and outside of Notre Dame. So Chip was the driving force behind Chip, and I'm trying to think who the other coach was. It wasn't Dell. There's another coach involved in getting Deion Colsey and Lorenzo Styles. Chip was very involved in Lorenzo Styles. But when Chip left and Tommy came on, Dell basically didn't really contact Deion a ton. And you got all these SEC schools all over him, and his position coach is kind of not really, he didn't really build any kind of connection there. Well, then he decommits. And it was Tommy Rees that drove the bus on getting him back into the class, not Dell Alexander. And so we've seen it this year. Dell did a great job with Tobias Merriweather. But I think I give Tommy Rees a ton of the credit for getting CJ Williams. And so to me, a lot of these wins they've had weren't about Dell. The 2018 class, they weren't about Dell. They were about Chip, just like a lot of the wins now are about Tommy Rees. Dell's he's just not putting in the work that you need to do to be a great recruiter or even a good recruiter at Notre Dame. And then when they get there, you don't have that same relationship with these players. You're not – there's no trust there. I mean, we've heard guys – if you don't believe me, listen to Brian Radigan. Listen to Joe Wilkins talk about things like that where, they don't think that they're being critical of the coach, but in fact that they are. So I think Vince just popped back in to be able to listen. I don't think he can join, but he's at least back in the thing listening. So 82 Slice. Are there any 22 silent commitments still out there? First of all, 82 Slice, I appreciate the super chat very, very much. As far as 22 silent commits, there aren't any that I'm aware of. I wish there were, but they're not. As far as I know. Again, that's as far as what I know. John Roberts asks, do you think our last few years are as good if we don't have Body by Bayless? Well, not if they don't have someone comparable, right? Like, I don't think Matt Bayless is the only great strength coach in the country. I think he's a great strength coach, but I don't think he's the only one. I mean, there are some other guys that, probably could have a comparable stats. I think the point is they don't have the success the last 4 years without a great strength coach. I think a strength program is incredibly important. There's a reason Urban Meyer brought Mickey Marotti with him everywhere he went, because he knew how important he was to his program. Matt Bayless helped kind of, train David Ballou for a year, who's now the strength coach at Alabama. Could David Ballou do a great job at Notre Dame? Sure. Yeah. But it's more about having a great strength coach than it is just Matt Bayless. But Matt Bayless is the great strength coach. And so, yeah, it's been a big reason for the success in recent years. Absolutely. Tommy Guns, Brian, you've talked about how Jalen masked Indy's issues on defense in 15 that showed up in 16 without him. I kind of view Clemson's offense the same way. Trevor covered issues last year that will show up this year, obviously, other than coaching difference. Yeah, Vince and I talked about this summer. Their offensive line was hot garbage last year. And having Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence masked that in a big, big way. And I don't see how that's going to be any different this year. And they don't have Trevor Lawrence. They don't have Travis Etienne. And, another guy they missed on Saturday. So if you get tired of hearing me talk about diversity at receiver, watch the Clemson game on Saturday against Georgia. Because all Clemson has is these big, tall, vertical receivers. And Georgia took that away because the quarterback didn't have time. They could have so desperately used Amari Rodgers, a guy that you can just throw a little quick 5-yard pass to. He can make somebody miss and go do something with it. A guy that can ISO Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in space and beat him twice. Once obviously Jeremiah got him back because he came behind him and stripped him, but he beat him on a third down on a great route. Beat Jeremiah earlier in the game on just a little 5-yard outcut, outran him. Jeremiah missed the tackle, and he turns it into a 20-plus yard gain. That combination of Cornell Powell's verticals ability and size with Amari Rodgers' ability to do things after the catch was really good. Then you go back and look at when they had Amari and was it 2018? They had Amari, but they also had Hunter Renfrow plus the big outside guys. Georgia was able to take away Clemson's outside receivers for the most part because they have big corners and because of the pass rush. And Georgia had nothing else. Clemson had nothing else to go to. They didn't have a back that could do what Travis Etienne could do. They didn't have a slot receiver that could take a 5-yard catch and turn it into a big play like Amari Rodgers did. You want to know why I've preached the diversity of receiver? That game right there is a perfect example as to why. And you're absolutely right. They don't have that eraser at quarterback or running back like they did last year, and that's going to hurt them. And that's why I said this offseason, said Clemson's going to slowly start coming down to earth, and that's a big reason why. And DJ's a great player. It's not about DJ's not a great player. It's DJ doesn't have the ability, the running ability, the mobility to overcome the fact that their offensive line's garbage. And they don't have those guys that can make quick, they don't have a tight end like Michael Mayer, right? Which helped Jack Cohn with a bad O-line avoid getting exposed for not being a super mobile guy. They don't have a Kyron Williams or Chris Tyree in the pass game. They don't have that kind of athlete. They just don't. And I think that hurts them. M. Kostrub, another great show. Thanks for answering my questions. Nailed my name this time. I'm trying to get better about that. Liam Gaming says more 21 personnel with Williams motioning to the slot with Diggs available now. I think I'd like to see that. Absolutely. Welling Jeremy, defensive problems are easily corrected. The O-line may take a couple more weeks to get it together. This week should help them. Yeah, and that's what we saw in 2018, right? I mean, their second game, their Michigan game, they battled. They were ready for that because it was a big game. They were pretty terrible against Ball State. They were just kind of okay against Vanderbilt. Pretty good against Wake Forest, and then by game 5, they were took off. So, yeah, they may look like world beaters this week because Toledo's not very good, but they're going to need guys to step up, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So I as long as they show progress this weekend, that's all I care about. Show progress, be physical. There's no excuse not to be physical. They're still going to, if they still have some misses and turn some guys loose, I can live with that, but just got to be physical. That's the only thing I absolutely demand this weekend. Jonathan Kismerick, I love Coach Kelly, man. Just wish he was better with the media and overall transparency. I agree. Welling Jeremy says, try Fritos in your chili. You won't go back to crackers. My wife made me try tortillas in my chili because I make chili a lot at home, but I do like a chicken chili. And my wife made me try it with Tostitos. Well, they're a different brand, but like tortilla chips. It was really good. Really good. Richard Robinson says, great job as always, Coach Richard. Where are your caps, my friend? I didn't recognize you at first. Great job as always, Coach. Do you think more players will be moved to different positions now? Lou was famous for it, worked out well. Not right now. I mean, and look, we've seen a lot of guys switch positions under Brian Kelly. This is not something that's new. I think this is more of, it's new because it's being done in the middle of the season out of necessity. But we saw, James Onwall and Matthias Farley as freshmen played receiver and then moved to defense. CJ Prosise began his career at safety, then moved to receiver, then moved to running back. Kavari Russell was recruited to play running back, and then when they had some issues at corner, I think Low Wood got hurt and some different things like that. They ended up moving him to corner. So we've seen this quite a bit. We've seen this quite a bit. OC Irish fans, I like the brats out in the quad area, support the different groups. Jacob C says, with all the injuries can we still realistically win 12 games? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, they lost 2 starters. All the other guys that were out were not starters, and one of those starters will be back at some point in time this season. So yeah, absolutely. And again, even with the injuries, is there a team on the schedule that you would say has more talent than Notre Dame? I don't. Joe says, I would love to see the Irish jump to a big lead and give the younger players a lot of meaningful minutes. I agree. Herney777, I'm a Chicago guy. Love raw sausage on the thin crust. I'm married so well with the sauce, or yellows, and San Fratellos were staples. Aranellos once in a while. We have a super chat down here from Paul Olmstead. Thank you, Paul, very, very much. Trying to find some last questions out here. Kevin asked, Coach, do you think Indy is testing the waters with Peacock for the Toledo game? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question about it. They're going to see how this goes. It's going to happen. They're going to go to streaming eventually. The question that I think this weekend is going to show is how quickly does it happen? They're absolutely. And if it's successful, it's going to speed up that process. John A1 is still excited to see Kevin Austin and Lindsey work. I thought this was going to be the group last year with Jurkovic. Hopefully, it would have been so good. Could you imagine the 2020 team with that offensive line, with Phil Jurkovic at quarterback and Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey at receiver with oh my goodness, you just had to do that to me. Hopefully the 2021 team comes along like we've all been hoping since this past spring. I agree. And I have not changed my opinion on that at all. Irishman 7114, late to the show. Sorry if the wide receivers stay healthy and match production from games where they've been healthy. What are the chances that Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey come back? I think slim. I don't see them coming back. Michael Krause says, a couple have said that Kelly is a good program builder and bad game day coach. The truth hurts. I don't think he's a bad game day coach. I think at times he's a bad big moment decision maker, but I don't think he's a bad game day coach. I don't think he's a great game day coach by any stretch, but I wouldn't call him bad. Chief Brody, Colorado over Texas A&M this week. I would love that. Andrew Goss says, in my opinion, the strength and conditioning coach is the second most important coach. I assume behind the head coach, if that is true. That is true. Irish for Life says, Brian, is this the place you mentioned? Seminole Grill, 226 West Cleveland there. Yes, I believe that is it. That sounds right. Yes, let me just look that up here real quick. I believe that Seamanini Gourmet on 226. Yes, that is it. So yeah, that is the place. Let me just make sure that. Yep, that is the place. I'm trying to look at their hours. Yeah, they're open Tuesday to Saturday from 5 to 9. So they're closed on Mondays. But yeah, Tuesday to Saturday from 5 to 9. It's if you can get in, it's definitely worth it. But that is the place. Thank you for showing that very much. Kevin says corn chips are the best in chili, Coach D. I'll have to try that. Not a big fan of corn chips, though. Mark A1, will Keys be allowed to use the football facility? Usually they'll allow that, but not when the team is there. But I don't. He probably won't be allowed to be around the team. There'll probably be times that he's allowed to work out, but he won't be allowed to be around. He won't be allowed to be around the team. Paul Rose says we need to go throwback to the wishbone with Buckner, Estime, Williams, and Tyree at least one time this season. Now that'd be awesome. So get like the old 1988 look, right? 89 look where you've got Tyler Buckner at quarterback and you've got that wishbone stack and you've got Audric Estime on one in the middle. You've got Kyron on one side, Chris Tyree on the other. That'd be a lot of fun. I would consider, instead of having Chris Tyree there, I consider going Estime, Williams, and Logan Diggs. Hey, here you go. Go 4 backs because, hey, you got 3 backs, right? No, you'd have 2 tight ends. I'd maybe consider like doing 1 tight end and then having Chris Tyree outside go 4 backs. Just have some fun with it, right? Paul Loam said, is IB having a tailgate? Can't wait to get back in the stadium. Been to at least one home game every year since 1974, with the exception of last year, of course. We will be having one next week against Purdue. We will not be having one this week. Paul Hamilton asks, with all the receiver transfers, are you concerned that this could happen to the QBs as well? Jerkovic already left. I'm honestly unsure how Kelly will handle the Buckner Pine situation. I'm not as worried about that because Phil Jerkovic's situation was a little bit unique, and it's not something we've seen often at quarterback. It was unique to him and his relationship with the quarterback's coach. I think Tommy Rees has a much better relationship with the quarterbacks on the roster now. So, I don't see a transfer there. I think this transfer thing has been unique to the receiver position, and there's a reason for that. Chief Brody, I think it was a record for how fast people switched from Notre Dame being amazing. Notre Dame's schedule being amazing to being full of cupcake teams after the Wisconsin UNC loss. And what's funny is they actually have more ranked teams on their schedule now than they did the week before. Yeah, you keep banging this Jason Adamiola drum, buddy, and I said it early in the week. I just don't agree with you. I don't think that was his responsibility. So we'll just have to agree to disagree on that one. Doug LePachin, I'm bringing my 92-year-old dad to the Cincinnati game. Will you be having a tailgate? I will not be having a tailgate that weekend, but I will be there that weekend with my wife. If you guys are there and you're around and having a tailgate, just let me know and we'll swing by. And we'll see it. But we won't be having hey, listen, here's the thing. If you guys want to organize and have like a tailgate where a lot of you show up, go for it. I'm all for that. When I say IB tailgate, and look, I'll always come by. If you guys organize your own tailgates, let me know, and we'll try to swing by as many as we can. But what I don't what I'm talking about when say IB tailgate, it's one that we're organizing, that we're catering, that we're going to be there for a long time, that we're setting up and doing all that. But if you all, and Vince just kind of gave me a thumbs up, if you all are like organizing to have a tailgate, we'll come by. Like tomorrow, if a bunch of you are going to be at the game tomorrow and hey, we're going to be over tailgating at so-and-so, let me know. Vince and I will swing by. Absolutely. But we're not organizing a tailgate tomorrow. So yeah, let me know. And look, my email is brian@irishbreakdown.com. Try to make it as simple as possible. So, and then of course on Twitter, I'm at Coach D178. And if you're a member of the message board, you can put something on the message board. Maybe start a thing, hey, who's all going to be at the game? Let's meet up or something like that. That's up to you guys. And if you do that, let us know. Jared Hardigan says, hey, Coach, I absolutely see some challenges given our current injuries in the middle of the schedule, specifically at Virginia Tech, USC back-to-back. From a defensive standpoint, will give us fit your take. Well, the nice thing about that back-to-back, Jared, is there's a bye week in between. And the reason when I like bye weeks is, as I've said before, I like bye weeks when it's scheduled for, hey, this is a rest and healing up period. And I think after playing Wisconsin, Cincinnati, and Virginia Tech back-to-back-to-back, that bye is perfectly set for them to have hey, let's catch our breath, let's get our legs back underneath us, and let's get healthy again. I think that is what I like about that. But look, it's a tough stretch, and that's what Notre Dame should be doing. They should be having tough stretches. But I still say, will those be tough stretches? Absolutely. Are those still games Notre Dame should win? Absolutely. And I don't think that changes because of some of the losses that they had. Jacob C. says, do you think Lawrence Keys could still come back this year? Could we move Hamilton to Rover to help with injuries? So number one, I'm not moving my All-American safety to Rover because you don't have good enough players behind him. That's the problem. I think Vince and I talked about this. I think Kyle Hamilton could be a monster at Rover. I mean, if you think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was good at Rover, imagine what Kyle Hamilton could do at Rover. With all due respect to Jeremiah, because now he's 3 inches taller and faster. The problem is you would significantly weaken your safety position. I think there are other options there at Rover. Plus, you don't need a Rover. You could put somebody else there. There's all types of things you could do. So no, that's not what I would do. Regarding Lawrence Keys, Notre Dame has approached Lawrence Keys, from what I'm told, about trying to come back to try to convince him to change his mind. He's not changing his mind. That bridge has been already blown up. I think, what was it yesterday? It was like by a Tomahawk missile launched from a carrier, or a submarine. It's done. It's done. James Scott says, just had a Blaze pizza. It's in Eddy Street Commons. They have a pesto pizza sauce with chicken and Italian sauces. It's delicious. And that's right across the street from the stadium. Irishman 714, why not do Davis at quarterback in the wishbone or power T formation? I mean, I get why you would do that, but I think if you're going to do that, just put Tyler Buckner there, because I think Tyler's every bit as dynamic and he's bigger. Neil Walker said, try to super chat. Not sure it worked. It didn't, but that's okay. Who should the Notre Dame Heisman PR machine push going into the season? I don't think they should push anybody going into the season. I think they should see how guys play out. Right now, based on how things went on Saturday or Sunday, it should be Jack Cohn. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what about Kyle Hamilton? Look, here's the deal. You can spend all your efforts on trying to push Kyle Hamilton for a Heisman Trophy, but the reality is unless you play offense and return kicks like Charles Woodson, defensive players not winning the Heisman Trophy. Kyle Hamilton doesn't need more of a push to be considered the best defensive player in the country, but it is an offensive trophy. It's a trophy primarily for quarterbacks, running backs, and then sometimes receivers. You could say Kyron Williams, but again, I just think Jack Cohn's going to be the guy that puts up the bigger numbers. So if Jack Cohn does the next couple games anything like what he did against Florida State, that's who my push would be. Because again, you have to take into consideration, what is the award really going to? Who's it go to normally? And are we doing our resources? Are we using our resources to go make a push for the right kind of player that has a legitimate chance to win? So that's why I say Jack Cohn. Mark 1 says, have you seen Lou's family? Are they doing okay? I have not. So obviously a lot of when Lou passed, he had just been married recently. And the good thing is that his wife is a very, very sweet lady. She has children. And so like older children who have been with her and are helping her through these times. But, obviously still a lot of sadness because Lou was a special guy. John A1 says, in the Rover position, I would like to see G get reps. He's long and has some coverage ability. If Freeman normally liked 3 safeties, now it makes more sense outside of the Wisconsin game. The problem is he's not ready, and that's the issue. He's not ready. They like his potential, but he's not ready to play right now. Right. Jonathan makes a great point. Look at what Manti did and still didn't get the Heisman. I mean, Manti will have probably more interceptions this year than Kyle Hamilton did. Because teams are just going to avoid him. But yeah, it's and that wasn't a great year when you look at Heisman contenders. There wasn't a lot. I mean, it's Colin Klein, and it wasn't a great year. And like you said, Manti still didn't get it. Jared Hardigan says, Coach agreed. However, you and Vince made sound arguments on how we must remain unscathed due to our depth issues. This is where I'm concerned. Our depth has me concerned, and I blame the coaches. I mean, I blame the coaches from the degree of, a receiver. But the guy that I blame for the linebacker issues is not at Notre Dame anymore. And look, I've said this before. This isn't new. I said this when he was still here. Clark Lee was a tremendous defensive coordinator and a really darn good linebacker coach. It's a bad recruiter. It just was. He wasn't an effective recruiter, especially as a D coordinator. Mike Elko is the guy that was driving a lot of the recruiting success at the very beginning. Clark just wasn't a good recruiter. This is why you can't strike out at a position like they did in the 2020 class. So, yeah, I mean, it's a problem. It's a problem. And you're seeing it. So, I mean, the guys that I'm blaming for the defensive issues and from a depth standpoint, they're not here. He's not here anymore. Offensively, the only place that I'm super concerned about the depth at this particular moment is receiver, because you've lost Lawrence Keys. You had to move Xavier Watts. Haven't had any injuries yet. Offensive line, I mean, they should still be okay. I mean, they should still be solid. I mean, they survived. Look, and this is not a knock on Blake Fisher, and Vince is watching right now, so I want to see if he agrees with me on this. I think Blake Fisher can be a great player. Losing Blake Fisher in the opener is not nearly as bad as losing Alex Bars against Stanford in 2018. Alex Bars was a fifth-year player. He was a captain. He was your best player, and you lost him in the fifth game when you're just getting good. And they survived. How many games did they lose the rest of the regular season? None. So they'll be okay. We'll be all right. In 2019, they lost Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer in back-to-back games. They lost Kramer against Michigan. They lost Hainsey against Virginia Tech. They went out those next 5 games, and they weren't against great teams. But they had Trevor Ruland and Josh Lugg starting, and they won all those games, right? They won all those games. So, to me, it's they should still be okay. Are they going to have a great line? No, but they don't have to have a great line. We've been just do your job. That's all they need. We'll end with this. Paul Rose says, can't believe it's been 20 years since 9/11 already. It was my first base in Warner Robins, Georgia on that day. Does Notre Dame have anything special planned for the pregame flyover? I don't know about the flyover specifically. I don't know what they're going to do. I would imagine so. Because I'm trying to remember when the last time they've had – my wife and I were talking about this the other day, because my wife used to shoot games for us when I was at BGI. And I'm trying to remember when the last time they had a game on September 11th. It was not that long ago. And let me find it here real quick. I thought they had a game on them. Okay, so maybe it was it was Michigan back in 2010. But it might have been a game, one of those days where it was like the game was on September 12th. But they did some sort of 9/11 thing within the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. They had a really cool flyover thing for it. My understanding is that they do have stuff planned for 9/11, like a memorial for 9/11, not memorial, but a kind of a remembrance and sort of something special planned. I don't know what that's going to be, but I've heard they're going to have something special planned. So I'm looking forward to seeing that because that's, you all heard what the passion that Vince had when he was talking about that the other day. I've been using this cup all week because it's a 9/11 Never Forget Hometown Heroes Cup from Mission Barbecue. So, just because it's been on my mind so much. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. Notre Dame's usually handled that kind of stuff with a lot of class and respect. And I look forward to seeing what they're going to do. Last couple of questions before we get out of here. Jared Hardigan, I thought the Osita Kwanu kid was a sound football player and had some high qualities and tangibles. Whatever happened to him, he's hurt. He was hurt during summer. He started the season off with a boot, so he's not there. He's not available at this point in time. That's another thing that's hurt the depth of linebacker too, but that was already done. And I think it's a pretty good way to end it. What do you think, Vince? Vince is down there looking. I think it's a pretty good way to end it. So, Jonathan, thank you for that. I agree. So that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you all so much for being with us. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, and so that you know when we're doing the post-game show on Saturday, make sure you hit that notification bell, smash that bell, and you'll let you know. If you're going to be doing a tailgate, if you guys are getting together on Saturday, just shoot me an email or a DM on Twitter. Vince and I will probably be showing up at the game together. So, we'll try to get there in enough time to go see some people. So let us know. If not, no big deal. We'll hopefully see some of you next week. Please let me know if you're going to be coming to the tailgate next week. Right now, it only looks like only about 10 people are going to be coming, which is fine. I just need, like I said, need to make sure I have the right numbers so we can make sure that we feed y'all and know how early we need to be out there. If there's not going to be that many people showing up, then obviously we won't need to get there as early. But so just shoot me a DM or respond to the poll on Twitter or on the message board. We also have a poll on our YouTube channel, just saying, hey, yes or no, are you coming? So we've had about 9 or 10 people respond to that. So anyway, thank you all again so much for being with us on today's Mailbag. We'll be back with you tomorrow after the game to break down the game. And of course, we'll be back on Sunday with our Upon Further review. So for Vince, I'm Brian. Talk to you all very soon. Have yourselves a great rest of your day.